Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of full council. I'm Councillor Rick Jones, Chairman of West Berkshire Council. Sitting beside me is Alan Law, Councillor Alan Law, the Vice Chairman, who's ready at a moment's notice to take over should the need arise. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube so that members of the public are able to follow proceedings. I'd like to thank members of the public who have joined us this evening and are watching proceedings via the broadcast into the reception area, although I think there's not many people there at the moment. Council members are present in the council chamber for this meeting. The members of council who are in attendance remotely will be entitled to speak and ask questions when invited to do so by myself, but will not be invited to partake in a vote on any of the items. The officers in attendance are the Executive Director for Resources, Joseph Holmes, the Executive Director for People, Andy Sharp, the Interim Executive Director for Place, Eric Owens. The Chief Executive, Nigel Lynn, is in attendance remotely. Sarah Clark, the Monitoring Officer, sitting on my left, will be the legal advisor to the meeting. And I'm also assisted by Vicky Yole, the clerk to the meeting, and by Lizzie Reeves, who will be acting as our Zoom host. Welcome to Honorary Alderman Paul Bryant and Andrew Rolls, who have joined us this evening. If we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit route. If the lockdown alarm sounds, we will remain seated and await instructions from officers. We will adjourn the meeting until such time as it is safe to proceed. I will now ask the monitoring officer to outline how the meeting will be conducted.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Can everyone present in the chamber please make sure that they switch on their microphones when invited to speak and speak directly into them, and switch them off when finished. Can I also ask you to make sure you have switched your mobile phones to silent and have turned the sound off on your tablets? Each member will be asked to vote on an item either by raising their hand or by using the microphone technology as directed by the chairman. If any member has difficulty using the technology, please raise your actual hand and an officer will assist. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the chairman will adjourn and will advise us to the revised time and date of the meeting. Do members have any questions about the way in which the meeting will be conducted before we proceed? No, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. I believe we've had apologies from Councillors Nasser Hunt and Councillor Claire Rolls. And sorry, Honorary Aldermen and Alderwomen, Councillors Keith Chopping, Graham Jones, Molly Locke, Anthony Stansfeld and Quintin Webb.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Mrs. Clark, Councillor Cole sent her apologies.
Thank you, that's noted. And I believe, Chairman, that Councillor Linden will be joining us momentarily.
Thank you. We'll move to item 2, as Chairman's remarks. I'll keep these short, members, as we may be tight for time this evening. Suffice to say that the Vice Chairman and I have attended some 19 meetings and events since our last council meeting in early October. We've met with a wide variety of organisations and attended several ceremonies, promoting and informing the public about the council, but also learning about the West Berkshire around the world. Before I move to my next remark, I should just, we've learnt today of the sad death of James Rees. Not a member, but an independent person who worked with the council for 10 years. He was one of our first independent members. So I won't ask to stand or a minute silence, but just to inform you that that sad event has happened. Members, the business on tonight's agenda is vital to the council and, more importantly, to our residents. It is complex and it is sensitive. I will endeavour to ensure that we focus on completing that business in as professional, constructive and harmonious a manner as possible. Members, let us be effective and to the point. Don't repeat business that has been put already. Be respectful of each other and let's serve our public well tonight. Turn to item 3, the minutes. Can I move that the minutes of the council meeting on 6th of October 2022 be signed as a correct record and ask for them to be seconded?
I'm happy to second that, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor. Members, are there any amendments that you wish to suggest for the minutes of the last meeting? I see none. So can I ask the monitoring officer to conduct a vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask all members who are happy to support that proposal to approve the minutes to please raise their hands? Thank you. Any against? Or abstentions? Thank you. I can confirm, Chairman, that they have been approved.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is declarations of interest, and the monitoring officer has provided advice to everyone that the fact that a member lives or works in West Berkshire will not automatically give rise to any form of interest in the recommendations relating to the Minerals and Waste Local Plan or the Local Plan Review. However, in the interests of transparency, I will ask that it be noted in the minutes that many of our members do live or work in this district, and that this fact alone does not amount to a formal interest. Have there been any other declarations of interest prior to the meeting?
Thank you, Chairman. I've not received any, but I think Councillor Brooks has indicated a desire to raise that.
Chairman, just that my wife worked at the watermill, but left 3 years ago. But we are friends of the watermill. We pay money to be friends. Yeah, just declaring that interest in terms of my motion, not pecuniary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Owen.
Mr. Chairman, I've never worked at the watermill, but I also am a friend of the watermill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5 then, petitions. I believe we do have one petition. Councillor Claire Rolls can't be with us tonight. I understand that it will be presented by Councillor James Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. It will be. I believe one of our officers is going to actually collect the petition, in which case our petitioner is over there.
This petition will be reviewed by the relevant officers who will confirm to the petitioner within 10 days what action will be taken on it. You have 5 minutes to speak to the permission to the petition, should you wish to do so, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think I'll need quite that long. I'm presenting this petition on behalf of Mrs. Maria Dobson of Kimbry, as one of the ward members for Hungerford and Kimbry, because Councillor Claire Rolls is unwell and unable to attend full council tonight. I must observe that it's good to see Mrs. Dobson here tonight. In retrospect, I feel it's a pity that she's not permitted to do this job herself. I understand that under the Constitution, presenting the petition is limited to formally reading or summarising the petition, giving details of the number of signatures, and stating its purpose. Therefore, firstly, formally reading the wording of the petition, this states, "We, the undersigned, call upon West Berkshire Council to adopt the following policy without delay. West Berkshire Council would ensure that it charges the correct amounts of money due to it for any and all services for which it levies charges, and will reimburse any resident or service user who has been charged in error or has been charged where no charge should have been levied." Secondly, there are 1,535 signatories on this petition. Thirdly, the purpose. This is about the community infrastructure levy, SIL, and how aggrieved Mrs. Dobson feels in being charged just over £24,000 as a result of not filling out one form, which she was unaware was required. You may remember there was another case, but that was in a different ward. Lastly, Chairman, while I have not signed this petition, had I been asked to, in this case, I would have done so. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Doran. In that case, we now move to, sorry, members, are there any other petitions that anyone wishes to present at this meeting? No. In which case we will then move to item 6, which is public questions. Thank you to the members of the public who have submitted questions to council, some of whom are here and some remotely. As time for public questions is limited to 30 minutes, and we have many questions, I've taken the decision to reorder some of the questions to prioritise those that relate to tonight's key business. To that end, we will take questions A, C, E, H and N first, and then the rest in order of business. We will answer as many as we can. If there are any that we do not get to, they will receive written responses, and all responses, both verbal and written, will be published for all to see on the council's website. The questions will appear on the screen and will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. Questioners will then be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary question. This should be to clarify the response and not to introduce new business. So can I call upon Councillor Richard Sonner to answer the question from Mr. Simon Pike, who's on Zoom. Is Mr. Pike in the room?
He's just joining.
Okay, so can we just wait for him to join? Is he in the room yet?
Yes, he's in the room now.
Hello, Mr. Pike, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. I'll ask Councillor Richard Sumner to answer your question.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Pike, for your question. The landscape could accommodate areas of new develop in some parts, in short. However, what I would advise is to look at our website under westberks.gov.uk/local-plan-evidence under landscape, and the full answer is provided there for you. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Yes, I do. At the time I raised the question, the only document that I knew about was referenced in a council paper dated December 2020, but the document that's now on the website is dated September 2021. So could you explain to me why the council needed to commission a second landscape capacity assessment for the same topic? And will the council publish the earlier paper as well? Thank you.
Not sure I can give you an answer in full, other than that anything local plan related is an evolving process which has been going on for a number of years. As I said, the full details are on there. I'm happy to receive anything from you independently if you wish to point something out specific.
Thank you. I will do so.
Can we now move to question? I understand that Mr. King is not with us, so he will receive a written answer. So we can move to question E from Sam Coppinger. If you're here, would you approach the lectern? You don't need to read the question. The answer will come to you, and you then can ask a supplementary should you wish. Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Coppinger, for your question. Now, I'm aware of a judicial review process on this, so I'm afraid the answer is very short, and that answer is no. Do you have a supplementary?
So I would like to ask, would you agree with me that B8 use is not the type of development that is required at Membury, and that small to medium units for local rural employment would be more appropriate?
And I would have to say, on the basis again of the judicial review, it would be unwise of me to offer a particular view on that one or the other, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Ms Coppinger, would you like to stay up and ask your question H, please? Or rather ask or get it responded to.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you again, Ms Coppinger, for your question. Supplementary planning documents, SPDs, should build upon and provide more detailed advice or guidance on policies in an adopted local plan. As they do not form part of the development plan, they cannot introduce new planning policies into the development plan. The proposed policies in the local plan review negate the need for an SPD. Do you have a supplementary?
Would you agree with me that if we had an SPD, we would have a better interpretation of what CS9 is trying to achieve rather than the uncontrolled development that is taking place?
And again, I'm afraid respectfully, I would have to say that with the previous answer I've given, there is policy and detail laid down that means I can't either agree or disagree with you. What we follow is what we follow.
Interesting.
Thank you, Mr Coppinger. We then turn to question N from Paula Sanderson, who I believe is on Zoom. Can you let me know when she is in the room, please?
Paula's now in the room.
Ms Sanderson, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. I'll ask Councillor Sumner to answer your question.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr Saunderson, for your question. You're correct. There are no big public exhibitions planned. The Regulation 19 is a formal stage, and we are currently consulting in accordance with our statement community involvement, which is available on our website. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I'm very disappointed with that answer because Section 18 took place during COVID and we couldn't have any public exhibitions. I've done some research and the responses to Section 18 were not as high as many similar LPA sized, similar size. So I really would urge you to rethink that policy and please provide some public exhibitions in key locations which have massive impacts.
Okay, thank you. I note that request. I'm happy to speak to officers. I think what we've had as a situation which has demonstrated through COVID that the electronic responses that we've received were actually, in all honesty, higher than we were probably expecting for the Regulation 18. So I'll take on board what you say. We will discuss, but I think it will probably be for future policies that we would look to that position.
Mm-hmm. No.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Ms Ruth Steedman, are you in the room? Hello. Could you approach the lectern, please? And could I ask, sorry, Councillor Sumner, to you again to answer this question.
Thank you again, Chairman, and thank you, Mr Stephen, for your question. To date, we've primarily concentrated the provision of EV charging points in council-controlled car parks and on residential streets with no off-street parking. And these locations will remain a priority going forward. Indeed, there is funding in the capital programme for the coming years to roll out further charge points in similar locations. To date, we've provided 35 on-street charge points in residential areas and 14 charge points in our public car parks. I would note that the council is not the only provider of EV charging there. The infrastructure can also be looked at through market options to fill gaps in infrastructure where it's viable to do so. Do you have a supplementary?
Okay, thank you. Many of the on-road charging points, particularly in Hungerford, anyone can park there. So you roll up, you need to charge your car and you can't because someone who doesn't even have an electric car is parked there. Are there any plans to actually create a bay such that that doesn't happen?
That is better if I press the button. That is something that we have had in discussion and review for a little while. We are looking at how we can approach that, and certain locations may be more favourable than others. But certainly it's something that isn't completely off the table. We just, at this stage, we haven't reached that point of being able to do so.
That's great. Thank you.
Can we therefore move to question D from Graham Story, who I believe is on Zoom?
Thank you, Mr. Story, for your question.
Councillor, should we just wait, just make sure he's in the room to hear us?
Graham Story's joined.
Has he joined? Mr. Story?
Hello, I am here, yes.
Thank you. Can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Sorry about that.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Story. The answer is yes. This is a requirement for all registered providers, and they are monitored via their returns to the regulator for social housing. Do you have a supplementary?
You say you're confident, but do you audit, review or question it? Because there has been a number of complaints recently in the press indicating that some of the social housing locally may not be up to standard.
I think you may be referring to an article in the Newbury Weekly News last week.
Yes, I am.
And I did actually make personal inquiries of Sovereign, who are the registered provider in that case, for assurement this work has all now been completed.
Okay, so you are confident there's no issues?
I am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Thank you, Councillor Williston. We move to question F, please, from Mr. Paul Morgan, who I should be on Zoom as well.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan's in the room.
Thanks, Chairman. And hi there, Mr. Morgan. Yes, that information was published on Contracts Finder on the 12th of September. We can email you a link to that along with the project scope and timescales. Do you have a supplementary?
Can you hear me okay now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's good. Does that include how much the council are paying for this consultancy work as well, councillor?
Yes, it does, Mr. Morgan.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you for sending that. But when will I get that?
As soon as we can email you the link, Mr. Morgan, I would imagine that'll be done tomorrow.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Question G from Mr. Miller, also on Zoom. Mr. Miller?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Hello, I'm in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Miller. So the council is committed to achieving continuous improvement in environmental stewardship. We've been making positive changes to both the curbside and non-curbside recycling services. And as I'm sure you're aware, our new separate food waste collections will help the council significantly improve it and the district's recycling performance. We've also been expanding our network of mini recycling centres, with the latest additions located in Thiel and East Garston, and we're shortly planning for a third new facility in the Tilehurst area. Our existing collection approach is based on achieving a greater quality and not just quantity of recycling. The non-curbside recycling facilities are intended to complement the curbside collection service, and a wider range of plastics, for example, can be sent to the non-curbside facilities. A detailed roadmap for recycling improvements will be captured as part of our emerging work on a replacement waste and resources strategy for West Berkshire, which will be developed and published by the end of 2023. Our strategy will reflect local resource management priorities and will also be informed by national policy and legislative drivers. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that. Update. I believe our good neighbours in South Oxfordshire and the Vale of White Horse were in the top 2 and 4 respectively in the whole country in 2020-21. West Berks were 89th. those are the latest numbers I could find. Do you consider that is good enough, considering you were one of the first councils to declare a climate emergency?
So, Councillor Miller, I think no council, be it Vale of White Horse or certainly ourselves, would consider anything good enough. We're all on a journey here. Absolutely, they started on a much wider scheme of recycling long before climate declarations were made. Yes, they collect a single bin, which may be the purpose of your question, and we have a different situation and different setting, hence our separate curbside collection. But in summary, we're constantly striving to improve our and the district's recycling performance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Is John Goatley here? In which case, could you move to the lectern, and can I ask Councillor Ross McKinnon to answer his question number J?
Thank you, Chairman, and hi, Mr. Goatley. The answer to your question is no. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. The London Road Industrial Estate.
Press the button on there.
The London Road Industrial Estate has been rolling on for near on 20 years now. And there's no planning application, yet you've said we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do everything else. Isn't that predetermination?
No.
Can we take question L, please, from Sam Coppinger? Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you again, Mr. Coppinger, for your question. Each planning application is determined on its merits and assessed against the development plan. The impact on surface water of any proposed development is assessed by the lead local flood authority, who are a consultee on such applications. Their assessment is also informed by material considerations such as the council's adopted sustainable drainage development, SPD. Do you have a supplementary?
So after the OSMC meeting, item 12, appendix B, my understanding is that the surface water strategy for Membury Industrial Estate is to use third-party land on the other side of the public highway. Does the member not agree that in accordance with the sustainable drainage SPD vision, that surface water runoff should be managed as close to the source as possible, just as should be happening on the London Road Industrial Estate?
I don't have an answer to give you on that now, and I will have to ask that it would be okay to give you a written response to that as a follow-up.
Question I, Mr. Paul Morgan. He's in the room.
No, I'm not. I'm on Zoom.
I mean, sorry, I meant in the room through Zoom. Sorry.
The Zoom room.
That is correct. I am zooming in.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks for your question again, Mr. Morgan. Yeah, look, I can confirm that that's the revenue budget gap as at the start of November. The government has subsequently announced at the autumn statement on the 17th of November a variety of measures to provide additional funding to support local councils. That includes an additional 2.8 billion of funding available for social care in 23-24, increasing to 4.7 billion in 24-25. That includes £1 billion of new grant funding next year for social care, increasing to 1.7 billion from 24-25. There's some funding via DLUC and DHSC in there. They've also delayed the planned adult social care charging reforms from October 2023 to October 2025. The funding that's intended for implementation of those will be retained in local authority budgets to help them meet current pressures. Furthermore, further council tax flexibilities, including increasing the core referendum limit for increases in council tax to 3% per year from 23-24. In addition, councils like us with social care responsibilities will be able to increase the adult social care precept by up to 2% per year. That will make available an anticipated additional £1.8 billion to local authorities over the next 2 years if councils make use of all of the flexibilities available. From the 1st of April 2023, a revaluation will update rateable values for non-domestic properties in England and the multiplier in line with evidence from April 2021. The autumn statement announced a £13.6 billion support package to protect ratepayers who are facing that increase. That includes a freezing of the business rates multipliers for 23-24, a transitional relief scheme to limit the rate at which bills can increase, a more generous retail, hospitality and leisure relief, and the supporting small business scheme to cap bill increases for businesses that lose relief due to the revaluation. Happily, local authorities will be fully compensated for any loss of income as a result of these business rates measures and will receive new burdens funding for administrative and IT costs. Of course, we await the local government finance settlement in December to provide the actual figures for West Berkshire Council, and we anticipate that this will further reduce the savings required. As you refer to in your question, we are conducting a further review of savings to close the gap for the year ahead per the executive report. And I have requested, along with my executive colleagues, for a review of all of our options, and we are currently working with officers to provide this to us in order to include the budget papers for 23-24 and deliver a balanced budget. Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's so lots of big numbers you quoted there, so it's quite interesting. So I guess what you're saying in summary is that there is a gap, but at the moment, to all these numbers you quoted, you don't know how big that gap is. I guess is the summary of your response to me. So in terms of what projects are you looking at specifically and who's looking at that to close the potential gap? That's the second part of my question. So I'd be grateful if you could answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. The first part of that supplementary, no, I wouldn't agree. We do know how big the gap is and was outlining both central government measures and actions taken locally in order to close that gap. So we are aware of that. You refer to projects. I'm not sure I would be able to name you individual projects that we're discontinuing or cutting. And in fact, it's the intention of this administration to ensure that next year's budget it contains no cuts to frontline services. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, via Zoom on question K, to be answered by Councillor Howard Williston.
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Miller. It is not for the council to have ambition for Newbury FC, but themselves. Newbury Football Club is currently playing matches in Tier 7, Division 2 of the Hellenic League, and West Berkshire officers are in regular dialogue with representatives of the club, who are very happy with the planned Step 4 provision that we will be providing at the Newbury Sports Hub. It will take several promotions for the club to achieve the Step 4 level. Sadly, a few people who are obsessed with football being played at Faraday Road, egged on by the Liberal Democrats, have delayed the project, denying our residents this fantastic new sports facility, which otherwise would be open for the next season and causing increased costs to council taxpayers. It is really disappointing. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Well, unlike you, the Conservative-led Mole Valley decided back in 2013 to redevelop the football ground in Dorking. Consequently to moving into the new ground, Dorking Wanderers went up the steps and are now in the National League. This is a town the size of Hungerford. It is a great story. Why on earth would you plan to remove any chance of that happening for Newbury?
To be honest, I don't think I can really comment on what happened at Dorking Town.
No, you're limiting the ambition to going beyond Step 4.
Miller, please, you've asked your question, let Howard Williston reply.
The original question related purely to Newbury FC, and I've responded to that already.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Can we move to question O? I'm sorry we're moving around so much, but the order of the questions is being done to be fair to everybody. The last question from Sam Coppinger. Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you again, Mr. Coventry, for your question. Lambourne is undertaking a neighbourhood development plan, and therefore they are responsible for allocating new housing in the parish. This means there is no need for a site selection paper from the council. Do you have a supplementary?
I think without a site selection paper, that would you not agree that it will be very difficult for the public to comment? And would it not be better to hold the local plan until that's been addressed?
I would say if they are doing a neighbourhood development plan, as with others, it will go out to full consultation, a referendum to the people that are relevant in that area. And it will be at that point that any outcomes will be established.
Thank you, Mr. Coppinger. Lastly, question M from Mr. Miller. Councillor Wollaston again.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Miller. Quite understandably, you do not understand the way West Berkshire's council finances work. There is a complete separation between the capital account and the revenue account. The 15 million potential shortfall you refer to is the revenue account, as has been outlined by Councillor McKinnon. And he's explained the way that hopefully will be controlled over the next few months. I can assure you that this administration will continue its prudent financial approach whilst delivering services to our residents, as evidenced by the recent independent survey of 304 English and Wales local authorities, where we were ranked 8th on financial record and 1st for overall service delivery. The costs of our investment in leisure provision are spread over 40 years, not a single year, so it's not remotely comparable. They come out of the capital account and are funded by government loans, a concessionary interest rate, and include capital repayment over that period. The investment in the Lido is required to ensure the provision for future generations, and the public consultation conducted between July and September 2021 revealed 95% support for investment in it. The historic operation of 10 weeks opening in the summer period is costly and inefficient. The new Lido will be open to the public for 6 months each year. The new 50-metre pool requires less water than the existing 74-metre Lido and will be far more energy efficient. The overall scheme provides a significant enhanced offer for families, including interactive water features for children. The investment in the Northcott Leisure Centre, programmed for 2024-25, will see an expansion of the health and fitness offer with a larger gym and more dance and exercise studios, which will increase income generation and lower operational costs. A review of the energy system will also be incorporated to maximise green energy. Without this investment, leisure tourism will be more expensive, not less, and therefore this investment is completely rational in the light of existing economic circumstances. In relation to the sports hub, costs have risen in large part due to delays caused by the impending judicial review. Nevertheless, the sports hub will provide vital new facilities to support the development of both football and rugby and address the significant underprovision of sports pitches that exist across West Berkshire. So the answer to your question is yes, this administration does. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for your answer. Now, whilst the Lib Dems fully support improvements to the Lido and also the objective of reducing the shortage of 3G pitches in West Berks, it's hard to believe that a modernised Lido facility cannot be achieved for far less than 4.5 million. And I can't understand the huge cost of the planned sports hub, which is really not a fit for purpose replacement for the Faraday Road Stadium. What do you say to those who believe that these two projects show evidence of your failure to provide value for money to the taxpayers of West Berks?
I would totally reject it. The Lido is a far more complex refurbishment than you possibly imagine. Basically, the back of the Lido pool was broken, and the costs just for that are very significant. In terms of the sports hub, we are producing a state-of-the-art scheme, which is good value for money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. That concludes public questions for this evening. And we'll move on to item 7, which is the membership of committees.
Chairman, I would like to propose, I thought actually they were going up on screen, the amendments to committees before you on screen this evening.
As if by magic.
Thank you.
Okay. Do these ask for find a seconder?
They do.
I'm too busy reading them.
Oh dear, what's their role?
Are there any comments from the floor, please? Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say it's a great shame that Councillor Claire Rolls has
going to be no longer chair of the Health Scrutiny Committee or even a member, because she has done very well establishing this new committee and has worked very hard. And only a couple of weeks ago, she was with us walking around the Royal Berkshire Hospital, but she also travelled there by train and on foot to experience what some of our residents have to do to get there. So as I said, I think it's a great shame. And I would I'd like to extend my profound thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the floor? In which case I'll ask the monitoring officer to conduct a vote, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask all members in favour of those proposed changes to raise their hands, please? Thank you. Any against? Okay. Any abstentions? I can confirm, Chairman, that those changes have been carried.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is motions from previous meetings, and I can advise members that the sprinklers motion tabled at a previous council meeting was discussed and responded to at the executive meeting on the 3rd of November 2022. And a link to the minutes of that meeting was included on this agenda. Therefore, we will not be revisiting the discussion on that item at this meeting. As normal, on agenda items 9 to 16, please members note the information in the summons related to each of those committees. I will advise you that I intend to take that on block, noting where those committees have and have not met. So can we now turn to item 17, which is the Minerals and Waste Local Plan adoption, which is in pages 41 to 180 of your pack. And can I invite Councillor Richard Sumner to formally move the recommendations in that report?
Happy to move, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second that and withhold my right, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pask. Councillor Sumner, would you like to introduce your report?
Chairman, thank you. Members, I'll try to be brief in presenting this paper because the Minerals and Waste Local Plan has been to Council on 2 occasions before this evening and comes before you now for final adoption. I want to firstly extend my thanks, my extreme thanks to officers for their continued work in developing this plan, in responding to consultation and responding to inspectors' comments. This will be the first West Berkshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan and provides protection against inappropriate development or extraction. The adoption of the Minerals and Waste Local Plan is good news for the residents of West Berkshire. This is an important strategic document to give protection to communities and ensure that mineral extraction, development and waste management facilities are planned in the most sustainable way. That has the least amount, in the most sustainable way that has the least amount of negative effects on the environment and quality of life. I do want to be clear that included in this plan is a policy on fracking. And I raise that because I'm acutely aware of historic conversations that have taken place on the subject. We are not anticipating that fracking will occur in West Berkshire. Firstly, because there are no licenses for mineral extraction approved. And secondly, because the underlying geology is not suitable. But if government changes its mind, we are ready. Members, the recommendations are detailed in section 2 of the report. And I would recommend that Council approve the West Berkshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan adoption version for adoption pursuant to section 23 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Members, do any members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Macron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This plan will replace a couple of plans, minerals and waste, which were both adopted over 30 years ago. This extremely long period is not entirely the fault of the council, but a lot of it is down to insufficient resources being devoted to this new plan, and many changes in staff have been allocated to it. The plan only allocates 2 new mineral sites, one for soft sand at Cheveley, which is within the area of outstanding natural beauty. But after many years of gravel extraction, resulting in a large proportion of the Kennet Valley being turned into lakes, it's welcome that the only additional gravel site, only one additional gravel site is allocated. This is largely due to changes over the intervening period, largely the increased use of recycled aggregates. However, it should be noted that West Berkshire will still be dependent on South Oxfordshire for the supply of soft sand and to other authorities for disposing of some of our waste. And I'm a bit concerned that this could be leading to some trouble in the future. However, we will be supporting this plan, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macron. Councillor Masters, did you raise your hand?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a little bit of clarification. Councillor Sumner, I welcome your comments regarding fracking and refer to my questions before. But just when you say if the government changes its mind, you are ready, are you going to be joining members of the public in campaigning against it? As an individual, not as a representative of this council.
You can answer, Councillor Richardson, if you wish to.
I'll reserve my right to answer, Councillor Masters, if that's okay with you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Marsh. Okay. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak on this item? No. So, Councillor Pask, would you like to?
Chairman, I would like to speak. I raise my hand.
Sorry, Councillor Cole. Not that many eyes in the head, that's what it is. Please continue.
Thank you, Chairman. I just really want to say how delighted I am to see this Minerals and Waste Local Plan coming to a successful conclusion. As Councillor Sumner said, it's been a long and hard process. But I would like to add that with regard to sand and gravel extraction, I firmly believe that the construction industry should start looking at alternative construction methods because it is a finite resource. And I think that is a message that we really need to get over to the construction industry. Not as though it's an issue for the plan, but it's something that we can't continue to extract materials. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. I think you had some general agreement in the chamber. Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, briefly, as I am the shadow portfolio holder for planning, I just want to explain why I hadn't intended to speak, and that's because Councillor McCrow has done a lot of the heavy lifting for our side over the years when sadly I wasn't a member of this council between 2015 and 2019. But I just want to actually endorse what Councillor Cole has said. I've long been a supporter of prefabricated off-site building. I wouldn't want to be out there in this weather, you know, laying bricks and concrete. It's so much better if it can be prefabbed. Unfortunately, prefabs have a bad name, but it does have an impact on our minerals and waste needs. So I just want to make that point that I agree with you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Pascal, I was premature, but I don't think I am now. So.
I'm looking around too, Chairman. There isn't a lot I'm wishing to add to this. There is general agreement, I know, and I am in general agreement that the smallest amount of mineral extraction should take place. Such items should be recycled as much as possible. But may I also extend my thanks to our officers. It has been a very long road to get to this stage. A lot of processes have had to have been gone through. And I think it's a real feather in our cap. We've got our own plan, Chairman. I thoroughly support it and hope that members will too.
Thank you, Councillor Pask. Councillor Sumner, would you like to wrap up, please?
Nothing else to add, really, Chairman. Thank you, other than the point that Councillor Macker quite rightly raised with regards to South Oxfordshire. I would say that was done with them, not to them, done in agreement. Other than that, I'm happy to push the recommendations forward, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments? We'll move to a vote then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please therefore ask all members in favour of that proposal to raise their hands? That appears to be unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, members. We're moving along nicely. We turn to so far. We turn to item 18 on the agenda, which is the local plan review, which is in pages 181 to 678 of your agenda pack. I hope you've had some good sleepless nights reading them. So, can I invite Councillor Sumner again to move the recommendation?
Happy to move the recommendation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion?
Happy to second this, Chairman, and reserve my rights.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Sumner.
I will let somebody else have a chance this evening, I promise. Chairman, thank you. Members, the local plan review paper before you this evening is a result of years of work, including extensive evidence gathering, thousands of hours of officers' time, consultation with the public, our neighbours and landowners in the district, and regular cross-party meetings with councillors who have shaped this draft. I want to start with offering my thanks to all of those that have collaboratively engaged, and in particular the officers that have worked tirelessly to deliver this draft for consultation. When I accepted the opportunity to be portfolio holder for planning in May 2021, the review had already been in motion for several years. This is a massive undertaking for any local authority, and I will say that this authority, unlike many of others around the country, has continued its work. We recognise the need for continuity of a local plan without gaps. Now, I recognise the scale of the task of reading and digesting the sheer volume of information before you, and my thanks to members of PAG who put up with that volume on a very, very regular basis. But this is why it's so important to me to recognise and emphasise the level of discussion that's taken place between all three parties under the cover of the Planning Advisory Group. It's also important to recognise that many challenges, and subsequent changes have been worked through. This paper provides recognition of the importance of the environment and the impact of climate change by setting ambitious standards for suitability and environmental impact. A plan to deliver around 9,000 much needed zero carbon new homes by 2039 for our residents, and that will ensure a mix of new homes, including those for growing families, for first-time buyers, for downsizers, and everyone else in our community. This will include infrastructure proposals to support new development and provide additional services for our existing communities, including provision for additional GP surgeries and schools. This is a business-friendly approach with spaces for West Berkshire's current businesses to grow and encourage new business into our district. That will create new jobs and opportunities for all. Protection of our valued assets, including the area of outstanding natural beauty and important green spaces, as well as local fauna. We've ensured that major themes have been addressed and resolved through following significant communication with local stakeholders during the previous Regulation 18 consultation. Importantly, this will involve enshrining in our policy our commitment to tackle climate change whenever possible, as well as limiting the number of houses proposed for areas such as North East Thatcham. We make sure that the environment and the effects of climate change are prioritised by supporting ambitious standards for suitability and environmental impact outlined in the local plan review ahead of government targets. We propose a new but smaller than previously proposed strategic development site in North East Thatcham. Based on feedback from the community, the number of homes proposed here has reduced to 1,500. With our policy for affordable housing, this alone will provide around 600 affordable units. This is one of a number of critical plans that we as an authority must have in place for the benefit of the council, our residents and our businesses. The plan establishes the parameters within which we, West Berkshire Council, can guide developers and His Majesty's inspectors to key elements of planning that we prioritise as essential across the district. Approval of this evening's paper immediately gives weight to over 40 development management policies contained within, and I'll highlight just a few of those, Chairman. Health and well-being, water quality and the maximum amount of water to be used in new dwellings, trees, woodlands and hedgerows, residential space standards, residential amenity, and sustaining a prosperous rural economy.
30 seconds, Councillor Summer.
Members, the purpose of this report is to present the main changes to the LPR and supporting documents following the Regulation 18 consultation, and to seek approval to undertake a further public consultation on these documents in accordance with the West Berkshire Statement of Community Involvement and Regulation 19. This additional consultation is undertaken on behalf of the Secretary of State so that the examination can focus on the key issues raised in relation to the submission version of the local plan. The full recommendations, Chairman, are detailed in section 2, and I wholeheartedly hope that members of this chamber will recognise its importance and need to vote for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Members, I'll open up for debate now, and I have Councillor Abs.
Actually, Chairman, I wish to put an amendment to the application. I thought this was the appropriate time to do that.
Could you elucidate, please?
Yes, I can indeed. I'd like to amend put an amendment and have it debated and so on as we go along to the local plan. It's a very simple change, to be honest. At the moment, it basically says, okay, we go ahead, we do the consultation, it comes back, gets collated, and off it goes to the Secretary of State. I would much prefer it, and I think it's essential that it comes back to Council for final approval before it goes off to Secretary of State. And therefore, that's the amendment I'd wish to make, to simply add the words to full council for approval prior to the Secretary of State for independent examination.
Can I be clear that you're proposing an amendment to the third recommendation?
It's actually in the conclusion, third recommendation, page 182. I'd have to look back now. Sorry, I didn't keep the document open in front.
Just for them, as we can't see it, as you can only hear it, you can't see it. I just want members to.
Oh, sorry.
It has been said clear what we're doing.
So, yes, thank you, Chair. So I think we have just received it. There was a slight delay, but we've got that now, and Vicky has shared that on the screen so people can see exactly what's proposed.
What I'd like to do is check that we technically can accept this as an amendment.
Yes, I think that the proposed amendment is acceptable in terms of it is adding words and it will not negate the proposal. So it is for this council to consider whether it is content to accept that recommendation following debate.
Does the amendment have a seconder, please?
I would like to second. I would like to second the amendment, Chairman. Yes, I got my hand up a little bit too early, I think.
Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, before Councillor Abs addresses the amendment, could we ask planning officers for some guidance in the same way as we would ask for guidance in a planning committee? Because obviously I want to understand whether this proposed amendment is allowable under the procedure, under the Reg 18, Reg 19 procedure, or whether there's any difficulty with it in law before we move forward, if that's agreeable to Councillor Abs.
I think that's up to the chairman, isn't it? Right?
Well, yes, but you understand.
If he wants to hear from Brian, I have spoken to Brian earlier.
We have already consulted with the officer, and we believe that the amendment is acceptable to debate.
It is likely to. I think it wouldn't be possible to bring this back to council until either March or April, at which point Purda may cause issues. So it will push it back probably until May for council to consider it. But I have been assured by planning colleagues that that will not invalidate any of the assessments, etc., that are within the current plan.
Thank you, Chairman.
Will you get more time to speak? No. Thank you.
He can if he wishes to, but I think he said.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, just to, I think it's self-evident the reason I've put it in, or the reason we put it in. Oh, thank you, Councillor McKinnon. You read my mind then. Because we think it's eminently reasonable that something of this import comes back to council for final approval before it goes off. And by doing so, it seems to be a much more sensible way of going about things. We don't really want to, I'm not comfortable just letting something come back and go off. I think we'll get into a bigger debate later about whether or not it should be going out at this time anyway, but that's not what this amendment is about. This is a simple amendment to basically allow us to come back for council, take a breath, and with the new director of place in place and so on and so forth, give that little bit of breathing room to be able to kind of be more careful about what we're doing here. So I don't need to add much more because it's pretty self-evident.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, a point of order, literally, if I can change my mind on the reserving the right, I think it would help the debate if I came in at this point, and I think it will answer Councillor Bridgman's question. And
of order, Chairman.
With the main.
I was going to just suggest that we maybe have a short recess while the ruling group consult, because it appears that they're being a little bit sideswiped by this suggestion, and they may need to consult on WhatsApp or in person.
I don't think that will be necessary. Thank you. Councillor Vickers, if you'd wish to speak as seconder and take that opportunity now, you may. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would echo much of what Councillor Sommer has said. There are many good things in this version of the report, and I like to think that our own detailed response to the Reg 18 is quite to some extent responsible for that. However, we would not be supporting the recommendation in full, and we would like to amend it in accordance with what is on the screen, and I will explain why. But first, because it is linked, I want to deal with the policy issues in the report as well, and I'll explain the link when we come on to it. Frankly, we think that green fields need to be used for tackling climate change and growing food, preferably for local consumption, and not for building large car-dependent housing estates. And we're very disappointed that two large brownfield sites within Newbury's settlement area, nearly in the town centre, that almost everyone agrees need redeveloping, the Kennet Centre and the London Road Industrial Estate, which incidentally is on the National Brownfield Register, and therefore, as policy SB 12 says, is potentially suitable for residential development. These have no housing allocation between them, and yet they could take between 500 and 1,000 homes and need little new infrastructure. Yes, they're said to be at risk of flooding from the River Kennet, but suitable mitigation from risk of flooding is perfectly possible. We don't think that sites much further from essential infrastructure can be better alternatives. And it's just a quirk of planning law that can allow them to have homes on them if a suitable planning application is made, but which won't allow them the allocation from those sites to go in the sound local plan, even as windfall. And I cite para 619 in our document. So the result of leaving these highly sustainable housing sites out of the plan is that up to 1,000 more homes are allocated towards each Thatcham than otherwise would be needed. And all of these on green fields and all in car-dependent estates. Thatcham can take a much more modest number. I believe 500 is still a strategic housing site. Pressure from local residents and the Lib Dem Town Council has helped reduce the number, but that is still 1,500 is still too many and in the wrong place. Now, as for the process we're asked to follow, and this is really addressing the amendment, It is quite unreasonable to expect members to be confident that all the supporting documents amount to an adequate evidence base, the foundation upon which our case will rest in the public examination. It needs more work and time. Until 10 days ago, members of PAG had not had our attention drawn to the very numerous evolving supporting documents. And my initial reading of these papers has found them to be full of minor errors. There's a lack of cross-referencing. It would be exceptionally difficult for lay ordinary consultees to follow. So we're simply not prepared to approve publication until this council, beyond its ruling executive, is confident that disappointed developers won't pull it apart and persuade the inspector to give it the thumbs down. I don't blame our planning policy team. I echo what Councillor Somner said. They've worked incredibly hard for many years, but they're under-resourced and the timetable has been too rushed by our executive. And I've been saying this for some time. We feel it's a political timetable that has been set to get the few key policy points of disagreement through to the Secretary of State before the election. But it's not just political, Chairman. We had begun an excellent relationship with Sue Halliwell as the Director of Place. And now Eric Owens is holding the fort well in the interim. And Brian Little, of course, is very experienced. He and I went through this 10 years ago. But it should be a new Director of Place, Claire Lawrence, who gets any delegated authority, Chairman. She's going to need the full confidence of the incoming council and its ruling administration to be confident in it herself. She's got to take the plan through its examination in public. So we want to delay the submission to the Secretary of State until after the May elections. This will still enable us to meet the current end of 2023 deadline for what's, I believe, known as the Regulation 22 submission to Secretary of State with all the accompanying documents. But we, or whoever our successors, as the corporate body of members and directors, will have a local plan then that is fit for purpose, Chairman. That is why we want to amend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. I think Councillor Brooks and then Councillor Sun.
Councillor Vickers may want to delay this until after the election. That's not what this is about. That's not what this is about. This is about proper due process and this council being in charge of its destiny. And what we're saying here, perfectly reasonably, you may scoff. What we're saying perfectly reasonably here is for the sake of 3 months, this council makes the decision. You don't delegate the authority on a plan that's going to last until 2037 and have impacts way beyond that. And we're saying 3 months delay to bring it back to council. And so we know what those consultation responses are. And if we say, well, okay, if anything substantive happens, we'll bring it back to council or is received, you tell me what substantive, your substantive is somebody else's minor. This needs to come back so members of this council decide. That's what this is about, and it's perfectly reasonable. And I see you scoffing, I see you grimacing, I see you sneering, which is not a good look, by the way. We are asking you reasonably to give it another 3 months, bring it back here, and then you can pass it March, April. You're so determined to get it through before a load of you are slung out in May. You're so determined. Bring it back in March and April. You'll get it through, perhaps. But get it through in this chamber. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Sumner, as the mover of the original motion, you have the right to speak last on the amendment. Do you want to do that or eat or drink now? Okay. Councillor McKinnon.
Chairman, may I have a point of order, please? A point of clarification. Councillor Brooks has mentioned that there may be significant.
It's gone off.
Sorry. Councillor Brooks has mentioned there may be significant changes to the consultation, to the Reg 19 consultation, that we all might want to have a good look at. But I'd like to clarify with the officers, because my understanding of a Reg 19 consultation is it's only minor. Anything that's significant would not be accepted, and the whole plan would have to fall and be started over again. I'd just like to understand that from the officers, that my understanding is correct.
Chair, if I may clarify the point, that's correct. Under the recommendations and the delegations proposed within the report, anything significant would mean that the plan could not be submitted to the inspectorate and would then have to be held to the council, and officers would have to review the significant issues raised and then would have to come back to council in due course in any event.
Thank you, Mr. Coach. Sorry, Councillor, because you've already spoken. You've done yours. Councillor Dillon, you have your hand in here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologies I can't be with you. I've got COVID. For me, Mr. Chairman, we've just approved the local minerals plan via a vote of full council. Now, as Councillor Brooks said, what's significant to one isn't necessarily significant to another, and you may have some residents in a ward where this has a huge impact on their life, but actually in the context of the overall plan, it isn't seen as a major change. But those members should have the right to come and lobby their councillors and to try to get their councillors to vote the way they want. And actually, by just delegating it to the officers to make the decision, you're taking away that democratic accountability of us as councillors to be able to stand up for our residents, even if it is only minor change. I can see Councillor Law shaking his head on the webcam, Mr. Chairman. And it's interesting that he asked for a point of order, didn't give it, asked for a point of clarification, which the Constitution doesn't allow, which is the Vice Chair of Council. I thought he would have been a bit more hot on, ready to take over at the drop of a hat, as you said in your opening remarks, Mr. Chairman. But look, this is just about Council being able to say we were the final ones that stamped it off. Whether the change was small or the change was large, that democratic mandate came from this chamber. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor McKellen.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we can all see what's going on here, because unfortunately, Councillor Vickers said the quiet part out loud, didn't he? We want to delay this until after the election. That's an exact quote. That's why they're getting a bit bad-tempered now. Let's reject this amendment and move on.
Yeah. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just request that I be allowed to sit during my contributions this evening, if that's okay with you, because it takes me about 5 minutes to stand up and another 5 minutes to sit down again. Thank you very much. Well, it's always a bit disappointing when this sort of tit for tat starts happening between the other two parties, and because it's going to end up with all the Lib Dems voting one way and all the Tories voting the other way. And since the Tories have the majority, the amendment probably won't get passed. But if we could just try and perhaps hear a Green point of view about the principle here, which is that far too few decisions, especially the really important ones, ever get debated properly or voted on by the full council. This is the biggest surprise to me since I was elected in 2019, and it's even a bigger surprise to my constituents who are aghast when they say, well, how did you vote on Sandalford? Then, well, we hadn't had a vote on Sandalford. How did you vote on this sports hub idea? Well, no, that was presented to us by the executive as a fait accompli, as was Sandalford, as are so many decisions. And I cannot see why any member of this council would not want to have that opportunity to have the final say. It just seems I mean, I didn't know. Maybe I didn't read the papers thoroughly enough. I was bogged down on page 680 of the local plan. But I didn't know that this amendment was coming up. But it seems a really excellent idea, because otherwise we've been presented with something, and it's a good document in many ways, things I don't like about it, such as Sandalford, which I'll come on to later in the meeting. But there are things in there that we all think are really good, and yet we're not being given the chance to really debate it or make any decision about it. We're being asked, your decision is, do you send it out and then never see it again until it comes back from the inspector, or do you actually have the sign off? And as Councillor Dillon rightly said, we've just signed off an important document, not as important perhaps as the local plan itself, but still the principle is there. And I cannot see why, for the sake of what the monitoring officer has said is a relatively short delay of 2 or 3 months, I cannot see why that is runs counter to the basic principle that this council should decide these decisions. We owe it to the people who elected us. You know, I don't want to go around my ward and be told by people, well, why didn't you stand up for us? Why didn't you put our point of view? Why didn't you stand up and represent what we think. The last councillors didn't, maybe you will, and I would like to, but you're not giving me a chance to, or anyone else in this chamber. So I do not see why anyone would, in all honesty, except for narrow political reasons, object to the amendment, and I hope people will support it. Thank you.
Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Jim. I think we're missing a point here, and I think both Councillor Marsh and Councillor Dillon have missed a point. This has been round the houses already once. It went round the houses in the Reg 18 stage. We have consulted. The public have had that opportunity to respond. We went all through that process to get to the point we're at now. And in my view, it is not correct to now amend the motion in order to bring it back after Reg 19, unless it happens anyway, because there are substantial proposals which the inspector decides are necessary. And then it'll come back anyway. So I see no point in the amendment, because it's going to come back if there's anything substantial. And we've been round the process to get to the point we're at now. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Sorry, Councillor Cant.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking from the back benches, and obviously we haven't been involved in a lot of the hard work that's gone into this. I'm slightly puzzled. It appears to me this has gone through, as Councillor Bridgman said, a very protracted development process, and it seems a very coherent document. So you either disagree with its content, which is one issue, and I guess as a council we decide whether we disagree with its content through this vote, or we don't. And 211 makes it quite clear, as I think several people have said, that it says agree any minor typographical and non-material changes. Otherwise, it'll return to the council. I mean, it's drop dead obvious. We don't need an amendment saying it'll come back anyway. I mean, if there's one typo to be amended, it then comes back to the council. What the hell's the point in that, frankly?
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Mr. Chairman, two things. Firstly, it's a detail, but for some of us, it's a quite important detail. Councillor Marsh has actually already referred to it, and that is, please, when we're in full council, with the chairman of council there, please, may we stand to speak. I think it's just a little piece of dignity and a piece of local democracy and local decency. The point that I actually wanted to make is that 10 years ago, this council did exactly what we're asking council to do now. Please stop putting all this face on. It doesn't matter whether it's before an election or after an election. It's what's going to happen in our district. It's what's going to happen in terms of fields being covered in houses. Let's get it right. Let's not worry about whether we have one, you have one, or whatever. Please, let's take the extra 2 to 3 months maximum to get the right decision in the right way at the right time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Pask.
Chairman, thank you. Stand by for a little shock, everybody. I'm not going to support it, but hey, I have a sympathy with the view. It has been expressed to me by the residents. I support that should be due process, that it should come back to council. Now, having said that, this is not like the waste and mineral plan that we voted on before. That had gone through the inspector. That was adoption. This is going forward to the next stage of consultation, Reg 19. I would actually really, my hand would be itching to support you, believe it or not. But the point I'm making, Councillor Law made, was that what we are doing is voting to take this to consultation, the next stage, the Reg 19. It is then for the planning inspectorate to appoint a planning inspector to examine everything in detail. Now, I've been saying to my residents, my action group, I attended a meeting on Monday, that what we've got to do is ensure that the Reg 19 responses are coordinated, they're gathered together, and then the inspector, and they can make responses, as can developers, as can anybody, at the public inquiry. And that is, I think, the proper process for this. So Chairman, I do have sympathy for it. I'm not probably going to abstain, but I understand the point, but it is a different point. The point being made from the other side of the chamber is that we vote on one plan, but that's a complete plan that has been through every stage. And this is, in my opinion, slightly different. And Chairman, I will be saying more later, please. Thank you.
Councillor Ardell-Water.
Thank you, Chairman. So having heard the arguments for this amendment from members, it does strike me that, frankly, this is a transparently political manoeuvre. It was introduced at the last possible minute. Again, the screen was the first time I and we on these benches have seen this amendment. And with the intent and by all accounts, very constructive participation of yourself, Councillor Vickers, Councillor Macker and other members of the PAG, alongside Councillor Sumner and officers, you know all the issues. In fact, I have not been a member of PAG. I know all the issues. We all know that the district needs to grow. We need to accommodate young people as well as existing residents. We know that we need to do it in a responsible and effective way and improve facilities in attachment. And again, I'm sure we'll go through these points again. But to introduce at the last possible minute an amendment which transparently seeks to absolve your party from needing to, from saying that we oppose this, but no, it's gone past the election and almost a roll of the dice. It is purely and only driven by your desire for political expediency, is it not? It's not the right process. It's not set up in how these things are done. So to say, as I think Councillor Dillon, you were alluding to, this is sort of in short, democracy is here, and when we as council members must make this decision, as you were saying, Councillor Marsh, frankly, I think it's a little disingenuous. It's not really, is it? Because apart from those members of planning who are, or PAG, who have been deeply into this, I don't feel remotely qualified to change my decision on the high level plan. I would expect expert officers and members who are on PAG to do that. So again, I don't see this amendment as a good thing. I'd see it as another transparent short-term stalling motion. Thank you.
Councillor Linden.
Thank you, Chairman. With 35 years experience on this council, I can assure you this is a start of this process. I've been hearing for decades, oh, this will be done within the relevant time period. You know, it's going to go to the inspectorate. It's then going to go to public consultation. Developers are going to be appealing and all the rest of it. It is going to be delayed. And quite rightly, I think we should be determining this plan to go to the inspectorate without delay. So I shall be voting against this amendment. Yeah.
Councillor Sumner, you wish to?
I think
sorry.
we need. Sorry, Chairman. I think it's for the mover of the amendment. If we're moving to the closure order, it's the mover of the amendment, which would be Councillor Abbs, followed by Councillor Sumner, who has the last word as the mover of the substantive original motion.
Thank you for correcting me, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You can probably see I'm a little bit disabled myself this evening. And to answer the first of all of those questions about very late, he did come very late. I wasn't very well. So apologies for that. But some things can't be brought, massively in advance. And, the fact that a good idea comes along doesn't mean you reject it. It turns out, though, it's not my idea and it's not the first time this has been an idea. It was at Reg 19 in 2010. The full council did what we're asking this evening anyway. So, last time we did it, this time we're not doing. So there's a massive anomaly rather for me, in that last time we decided we should do it, this time we're deciding we don't need to do it, which is it really. So, I cannot understand, and it's not political, it's just an idea, right? So let's look at this. We're saying no to taking the last opportunity before we don't see it again, before that whatever we see in Reg 19 consultation, the officers will collate. We don't know what's going to come back, but we would have a chance as a council if it came back to us to go, oh, actually, the officers didn't think it's significant, but actually we do. And therefore we have a chance to just pop it back again, because if we do find something, that we don't like, we do get an opportunity to change our minds. And yes, I know that means going through the process again. But for me, it's best that we get this right the first time round, because it's even more expensive if the Secretary of State start receiving loads of feedbacks on this Reg 19 consultation, which puts the whole plan into disarray anyway. So it's a small amendment. It's an opportunity. It's something we've done before. So please take the politics out of it for the moment. Vote with your conscience. That's what I'll be doing. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Councillor Sumner.
Well, how disappointing. Thank you. I opened this piece this evening by re-emphasising how pleased I was with the cross-party working that has taken part essentially since 2017. I find it very disappointing to see the last meeting of PAG, which broadly had everybody nodding and supporting and a few questions that needed to be answered, turning into this. Councillor Abbs mentioned getting it right the first time round. Regulation 18 was the first time round. Comments were made, and adjustments have been made. And that's what I said earlier. We've taken on board, we've made changes from those challenges. I think I heard Councillor Vickers made a comment about members not being able to make the decision or qualified to make the decision. No, the inspector is and the officer is. Officers and inspectors are qualified to do that. We, in the main, given that some people are probably a little bit more educated in planning matters, are not. PAG has done a lot of work on this, and this particular point hasn't come forward. Minerals and Waste Plan, as far as I'm concerned, went through the same process. Consultation, inspector, changes on the basis of the inspector's outcome, back to us to approve it and adopt it. I think the fact that this has been in place and ongoing since 2017 means we've had enough delays for whatever reasons it may be. I think this is the time to start moving forward, getting this plan out to consultation for the people across the district to have their say, whether it's residents, businesses, makes no difference. They have an opportunity. And interestingly, North East Thatcham Partnership has emailed us all this evening, and they're giving their support to it. Now, as a group of developers, if they had any concerns, I would feel fairly certain that they would raise them there and then. Regulation 19 is the opportunity for the people in West Berkshire to give their views. My colleague mentioned disagreeing with content by this vote. Disagreeing with the content by Regulation 19 is what we're asking people to do. If they have an issue, if they have an observation, and as has been said, if it's major, it will come back. By default, that's the process. I won't be supporting this request for an amendment, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. I think we have debated the amendment now, and can I call for a vote on the amendment as tabled earlier?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please ask members who are in favour of the proposed amendment to please raise their hands now? Thank you, that's 17. And those who are opposed? And any abstentions? Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that that proposed amendment has failed. So we move now back to the original motion.
Thank you. I will therefore move into the debate for the original motion. Can I remind members that we've had a lot of content through the debate on the amendment, and I would ask you please do not repeat that content in this part of the debate. We've heard that. So if you have new points to make, then please make them. And I open up the debate now.
Chairman, I believe it's a new debate and I get a new chance, do I?
You do.
Thank you. In the light
As long
of
as you don't repeat everything you said before.
No, I won't. I promise you. I mean, in the light of where we are now, our desire to bring it back to council automatically is voted down. Fine. I still believe that if officers find, as a result of seeing the comments back, that or indeed before the comments back, if they do their own cross-checking, which I feel at the moment badly needs to be done, we have a sustainability appraisal, which at the last time we went through this 10 years ago, constantly was referred to in what was then called the Planning Policy Task Group. It seemed to be towards the end of the process, most of the discussion. It's sort of come to us after the last PAG met, unless it was all dealt with before I got re-elected back on in 2019. But no, it is really important that this is evidence-based policy. Now, I've been quite happy until now to take on trust what the officers have advised us in PAG, and it's all looked great and the policies looks good. But I'm thinking now, as Councillor Linden said, looking ahead to how the developers and their highly paid consultants and agents are going to treat this. If it doesn't all hang together as a set of documents supporting the local plan, we have a problem. So I would ask, if we can't bring it back to this council, let's not rush to the publication date that we're aiming at. If it can't get sent off to the Secretary of State because we haven't finished collating the responses to the Reg 19 consultation, 6 weeks is not very long. I know officers hope that all the big problems are being dealt with through the Reg 18, but I don't believe we are going to get away with it that lightly, however good a job the officers have done. I think the disappointed developers will fight it all the way, both in very lengthy responses to this consultation and in the examination in public. And I think you might, I mean, you're acting as though you won't be in charge of this council next year and rushing it through. But I think if you were, you would be feeling like I am, that we really need to get this right. Or are you so depressed about your prospects that you're happy to lumber us with the problems? You know, that's what it feels like. And it has felt like that for months as we've been through this chaotic year of 5 housing ministers in a year. So much for stable one-party government. So I do believe, Chairman, it would be right not to rush the officers into getting the final formal publication out too quickly and not to rush the collation process when the consultation ends, and to allow the new incoming permanent director place plenty of time to talk to study it herself while we're all electioneering, and then to bring it back to whoever is running this council to make sure that we're all on side and we can defend it in the coming council period. That's what I ask. And I just would like to close by praising my colleagues on PAG. We have worked collaborative across council and we got a damn good set of plans. I'm really looking forward to defending the policies, but we won't be able to defend them after adoption if we fail to get it adopted because it's not sound. And I fear that because we haven't had a chance to look at the evidence base, the sustainability appraisal and all of that stuff, that it may get pulled apart by the dissatisfied would-be developers and their landowner friends. They are a very powerful lobby. We all know that. Councillor Cole knows that. We've been together on this, trying to get national policy change to give localism a real chance in planning. And we haven't got there yet. So thank you, Chairman. We will not be supporting the unamended recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm just going to get my hand down on the screen. So, Mr. Chairman, as my planning spokesman, Councillor Vickers, just pointed out, we won't be supporting the motion this evening. But that doesn't mean that we are against every detail or policy in this plan, and we welcome the environmental policies being given more prominence. However, in a separate point, we are against a rushed vote to get this through before the elections. From the worrying lack of key documents and outdated information, that seems exactly what we're doing here. We're working to an electoral timeline rather than one that delivers the best outcomes for West Berkshire. It seems particularly true for those communities that are taking the largest share in this plan period. In the Reg 18 submission, the Thatcham Strategic Growth Study carried out a viability study, assuming 2,500 and 2,300 dwellings. Now, surely that must be considered invalid. A key point of that viability study was a 50% contribution to a secondary school would be available at phase 4 of the build programme, which was 2,000 houses. Now being proposed at 1,500 houses. So where is the funding for the school now going to come from? And although no viability assessment has been completed for the 1,500 homes, there are references in the old viability plan that education provision would be affected with reduced numbers of dwellings. So which is it? The simple answer is we don't know yet. And so you shouldn't ask our local community and stakeholders to give a view on an unfinished piece of work. But what we can assume is that this local plan as currently written will deliver more houses in Thatcham in a shorter period and with less education infrastructure. This is simply unfair, unsustainable, and sets us up for future failure. The reduction or loss of any school will also impact the playing pitch strategy, which requires the use of school fields to meet the required criteria of pitches within the area. Again, this is under risk under the current proposals. My final comment on the Thatcham allocation is in relation to the growth study for the town. SP 17 states the study provides the guiding principles. However, this study again is based on 2,500 homes and it doesn't state what the principles are. And then in the final paragraph of SP 17, 6.63, it states that a coherent master plan is required. This would seem to confirm that the growth study is no longer a valid master plan. So where is the new one on which people can make informed decisions? Mr. Chairman, in just a couple of minutes, I've highlighted the loss of education provision, studies based on old numbers, inconsistency with the council's own documents, and I could go further, such as a transport assessment being from 2020, 3 years after this will be consulted on, or no updated infrastructure delivery plan for Thatcham. With such discrepancies, it cannot be right that we approve this motion and leave future housing allocation for the next generation to be left to delegated decision, when the public will be making comments on flawed thinking. As councillors, we need to say now is the time to pause, to get the correct information together and then go out to the public in full confidence that they can make informed contributions. Mr. Chairman, I think this administration knows that its time is up, that it's lost any concern for the future planning of this district. Otherwise, Mr. Chairman, why would they be putting forward a plan with so many holes in it? Thank you.
Councillor Pask.
Chairman, thank you. This local plan review is a comprehensive document. It's taken very many officer hours. Actually, I think we should measure it in officer weeks. It's taken them so long. Is it complete is what we're being asked. It is being worked on flat out to ensure it is. If the viability study was done on 2,500 houses and that's been reduced, for which I am thankful, then clearly that work has to be revisited and revised. But Chairman, I've always supported West Berkshire being a plan-led authority. This is my 5th plan review that I have been involved with in my 35 and a half years. But then nothing is more controversial than planning, is it? I have much to praise in this paper, such as the policies to protect our environment and surroundings, including, as has been mentioned already, the OMB, our water resources, listed buildings, assets of archaeological importance, and much more. There are many other important policies for which I think there will be general agreement, including rural exception sites to boost our rural economy, which is important to West Berkshire. Residential extensions, all these things need to be in a local plan. I support those wholeheartedly. There is, however, one policy, which will come as no surprise to some of you, that is deeply concerning to the residents of Bucklebury, that I have represented for 35 and a half years. Of course, it's SP 17, the North East Thatcham strategic site, is it not? And I acknowledge and I'm grateful for the reduction, the 40% reduction of housing from 2,500 to 1,500. Yeah, fine detail to be resolved, I accept. My residents fear the increase in local road use. Now, I'm going to tell you a little anecdote, Chairman. Having moved into Bucklebury as an incomer a mere 45 years ago next month, we used to wait for the odd car coming by to cross the road or to exit our drive. Now, when I go and walk the dog, I wait for 10 from one direction, I wait for 3 or 4, then by the time they've gone, another 6 from that direction. What has caused this? The increase came from the development at the bottom of Harts Hill Road in North East Thatcham of Dunstan Park Siege Cross and the rat running because the A4 is fairly full. I believe that is a legitimate fear my residents have and needs to be addressed. Now, Bucklebury Common is a beautiful place. It's a common, it's open to everybody. We welcome everybody except those inconsiderate minority people who abuse it with their 4x4s. One was set fire to only over the weekend, and motorcycles. But there is concern, in particular, it isn't a playground, it isn't a country park, it's a common. In particular, statements such as, and I quote, facilitate connection to the AONB, as though we're directing people, this is the playground, come on up. We need to deliver real benefit to biodiversity and protect its fragile ecosystem. There are rare animals there. I don't want to list them all, not in public. We have, for example, nightjars, the only example I'm going to give you, Chairman, ground nesting birds, lots of people, they will be disrupted. We're down to about 6 pairs, if that now. There used to be many more. The final issue I have a real problem, I'm really disappointed on this one, is DM2 on page 355. That's the separation of settlements. Now, we used to have a strategic gap policy in the local plan until I believe it was Eric Pickles. That's one of ours, isn't it? But anyway, I shall still say it. Eric Pickles, I think, abolished strategic gaps. Now, that is important to my residents. And what do I find? That just the countryside designation study in this year, 2022, in brackets, it says in the plan, didn't recognise this need and doesn't think it's important that we should have a gap, a defined gap. There are others are listed. Others are listed, such as Thatcham and Coldash. I'm referring to page 355, Chairman. Thatcham and Ashmore Green, even Newbury and Thatcham. I'm going to quote, Chairman.
30 seconds, Councillor Pascoe.
30, I'll talk even faster. Currently, the parcel of land at Thatcham and Upper Bucklebury does not meet the criteria for designation of the essential gap, etc. Further assessment of the gap will need to be carried out to the extent of the full development. Chairman, I'm not asking for I'm asking for the principle of the defined gap, not the precise line. Chairman, there are many other points I'd love to raise now at this meeting. I'm conscious, you just told me, I'm running out of time very quickly and talking as fast as I possibly can. I know there are many concerns raised by the residents of Bucklebury during Regulation 19. I will continue to support them. Thank you, Chairman. I think I've made it.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps before I enter details of specific areas, and I know Councillor Pack has just obviously highlighted his own patch in Bucklebury, I intend to highlight my own patch and some of the comments in the document relating to Greenham. But one thing I would like to address is the amount of power that's being used tonight to heat this room, and then suddenly we all get a cold blast around our necks. Surely it can be adjusted differently. I don't want to be roasting 1 minute and then a draft down the neck the next. So perhaps that can be addressed. In relationship to comments on this document, and I will start specifically referring to the gap between Newbury and Greenham. As Councillor Pascoe said, it's been listed a lot of other settlements in relationship to Newbury and Thatcham, but definitely not in relationship to Newbury and Greenham. And we as Greenham councillors are very particular about our gap, and we've lost our gap. We've lost our gap hell of a lot recently in all the developments that have come around us. So please, please, can we make sure there is a gap between Newbury and Greenham is kept separate. Regarding these comments on these allocated sites, and I'm a little bit concerned about some of the wording, and some of the wording to me is unfortunately not factually correct. In specifically, the area, let's say, in relationship to the sustainable retail parks. Retail parks, we've got Newbury Retail Park bordering us in part of our area. It also refers it specifically in regarding sustainable parking, sustainable buildings within this retail park. I would hope that if there's any extension of the retail park, consideration is given towards the access and egress, the amount of times that the A339 and Pinchington Lane is clogged up. I think we need to look very closely at any increase. On the settlement sites that are listed, I see there's no omission, there's omission of the Newbury and Greenham Golf Course, which I gather was deemed to be a large site. I presume that's been omitted for some reason. Referring to the allocated site of RSA4, that's the north of Pinchington Lane, 106 units, which is already being built. It talks about integrated water and drainage strategy, but compacting the land, which has taken place recently, is totally disturbing residents. Surely this is not creating more surely this is going to create more service drainage problems. And 2007, 2016, that was dripping well down. Apologies, sorry, am I disturbing the microphone? And then policy DM37, it talks about Newbury Racecourse and the need to have high quality, sustainable development, sensitive to the environmental quality, historical character of the area. Tell me, is that correct? What's happening? We've got inferior buildings. Most of them have to have new roofs, leaking, and also one wall on one particular building is crumbling. It talks about consideration to surrounding neighbours. I challenge that. Okay. Sorry, am I speaking above the microphone or below? Okay, apologies. Sorry, Councillor Abs. I think we need to look very seriously at some of the wording of some of these points in the document, because I like to think it's factually correct and not just a statement which is going to be not taken in any serious nature at all. So please, can we make sure that anything that's written in there is factually correct and it does refer to the area in question.
Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councillor Pask about this issue of strategic gaps. We also need gaps between Calcott and Thiel, Tynemouth and Thiel, and perhaps further on Thames and Pangbourne. A great omission. In the east, the emphasis has really been on Thiel because the establishment of the detailed emergency planning zones around Burfield and Aldermaston atomic weapons establishments has meant that that's precluded any development in those areas. Also, there was some concern at one time that there would be a housing allocation in Princess Hill, which has not come to pass, and I think all of us in the east are very pleased about that. Regarding Thiel, the core strategy contained the following phrase: the lakeside development is planning permission to provide 350 homes. If this development goes ahead, Thiel would need to undergo a period of consolidation to provide an opportunity for facilities and services to be upgraded. That phrase has been dropped from the local plan review with no justification. The lakeside site has now got planning permission and development of it is likely to start. So just as we need that phrase, the phrase has been taken away. What is more, the HSA DPD allocated another a site close to that lakeside site for 100 homes. So the size of Thiel is going to increase by about 25% without anything from this local plan review. However, another 100 homes has been planned. A bit of a reduction from Reg 18, thanks to a response to the consultation, but which is welcome, of course. But we've got housing site upon housing site upon housing site, and Thiel can't take it. I've been doing a survey of residents, and over again, they complain about infrastructure, they complain about access to the doctors and health services. And this is only going to make things far, far, far worse. And as I mentioned before, these sites would actually narrow that gap we do have at the moment between Thiel, Calcott and Tilehurst. And one of those sites, the access is very poor along single track roads and very poor footways. I do welcome the fact that site at Reg 18 consultation for 20,000 square meters, of offices has been dropped. That should never have been put there in the first place, but I welcome the fact it's been dropped. Some time ago, a mention has been made about windfall. There's a ceiling, if you like, on windfall allowance. So although 76% of new homes in West Berkshire have been built on what's called windfall sites, in other words, sites that haven't been allocated for housing, there's been a ceiling put on so that any site of more than 10 units is not counted. Now, at the moment in Thiel, we've got 15 flats being built on a site of two offices. That wouldn't have been included in the windfall allowance. A few years ago, we had 29 flats built on a piece of undeveloped land. That wasn't included as windfall for the same reason. Also, it wasn't allocated because it's in the settlement boundary. So over and over again, we're getting these kind of windfall sites and these larger sites within the settlement boundaries developed. No account has been taken of those, which means that we're going to be building far more on green fields than we really need to.
1 minute, Councillor Macklin.
Reference has been made to incomplete documentation and the late availability of sustainability appraisal. The sustainability appraisal for the sustainability policy in the plan says that that policy will have a neutral effect on sustainability. So I think there's, as has been said, there's inconsistencies between these documents, and they really need to be sorted out before this goes to the planning inspectors. So as if the plan is not really, and the supporting documentation is not sufficiently complete, that the plan as it stands is bad for the East and bad for West Berkshire. Thank you very much.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chairman. Before you start the clock, may I just reassure Councillor Jeffrey that I would stand if I could, and the good news from my surgeon is that I will be able to stand by in good time for the next meeting of full council, if not before. Now I'll start properly now. I think Councillor Pask has, I agree with his points. He knows more about it than I do, but his comments on SP 17 were very eloquently expressed. And I want to just make a few remarks about SP 16 of Sandalford, because I think those two strategic policies go to the heart of what reservations we mainly have about this document, which does have a lot of positives in it, as others have said. And I read there's a green thread running through this document. Well, of course there is. You've got some green councillors now, and we're not claiming all the credit for it, but we have been campaigning for zero carbon on housing for many years before we were on the council, and the same with major increases in affordable housing and indeed social housing, which we'd actually like to see rather more of in the local plan. But just to express one problem, it's no good saying you're going to have zero carbon housing if you give them a get out, the developers have a get out clause, and then they come along to you as they do over affordable housing and say, well, actually, we don't think we can deliver that. And you say, that's fine, just give us some money and all will be well. If we're going to have a local plan, it's got to be enforced properly. Now, to talk about SP 16, I think Councillor Vickers may have briefly alluded to this. The problem with the plan in its current form is it relies on building two large developments on greenfield sites which are incompatible and contradictory to its own policies expressed elsewhere in the plan. And if you look at Sandalford, SP 16, right from the very start, SP 1, which talks about prioritising sites of lower environmental value on previously developed land, conserving and enhancing the natural environment. None of those things apply to what's proposed for Sandalford. SP 10, green infrastructure, talks about wildlife corridors and habitat connectivity. You are going to lose that. There is no way to keep it if you're putting 1,500 houses in those fields. SP11, which promises appropriate buffer zones. Now, here's a practical suggestion. Let's say what we mean by appropriate buffers for ancient woodland, because we say 15 at the moment, and it's obviously ludicrously inadequate, and no one thinks that is an effective buffer zone. Natural England say more than 15, the Wildlife Trust say 30, the Woodland Trust says 50, the Kings Lynn and West Norfolk Council says 50 and has agreed that with planning applications in its own council area. And those bastions of Khmer Rouge style left-wing policies, Wiltshire County Council, have 100-metre woodland buffer between ancient woodland and development. And as for biodiversity net gain, which is in the same SP, it defines it as development that leaves the environment in a measurably better state than before. And it doesn't sound like that's going to happen in SP 17, and it sure isn't going to happen in SP 16. And by the way, SP 23 transport says development should minimize the impact of all forms of travel on the environment. Well, you're building something, sounds like you're building two greenfield developments that could have been designed to encourage the residents to use their cars, because they're exactly too far from the centres of Thatcham and of Newbury for people, however good you make the public transport and however much you tell them they should cycle, they will use their cars. DM2 separation of settlements has been talked about, but I would just say the previous idea that we had a separation between Newbury and Greenham are null and void, because we've got Highwood Cop School, we've got a proposal RSA1 to build on land north of Newbury College, we've got RSA4 building off Greenham Road, and we've got this proposed sports hub which may or may not happen in Monks Lane. And we've also got a failure to determine the Alder development at Newbury College, all of which suggests that any previous pledges by the council in previous local plans to preserve that separation of settlements between Newbury and Greenham are null and void. I talked about ancient wood, and I just want to touch on this. Page 488 of this document makes the astonishing claim that SP 16 is, quote, likely to have an overall positive impact on sustainability. The sole reason given for this is that, quote, the policy will help to deliver new housing to meet local needs. So there you go. If you build new houses, they're by definition sustainable. How absurd, when even the inspector who approved the first phase of Sandalford, if that happens, doesn't mean we have to have the second phase, doesn't mean we have to have Sandalford Park West, which is even more damaging. The inspector said badgers, brown hares, skylarks will suffer, quote, residual harm. There won't be any left, just like the nightjars in Thatcham. And then finally, I come to the Warren Road access road, which is probably the single worst feature of the entire Sandalford saga. This was designated in a special policy document for pedestrians, cyclists and public transport only. Without explanation, in this version of the local plan, it's been redesignated for, quote, primary all vehicle access. What a betrayal of the people of Wash Common and the pupils of Park House School a few feet away from this road, from the pupils of Falkland School opposite, and from the parishioners of the two churches right next door as well. And another previous condition of this development, a single planning application to cover the whole site, has been ditched. Why? Because the developers couldn't agree with each other, but instead of standing up to them, the council has chosen to roll over again and says, quote, it remains the firm belief of the council that Sandalford Park is the most appropriate location for strategic housing delivery in Newbury. Not my council, Richard. The Conservatives allocated, voted for, and consistently promoted the Sandalford site. It's a monument to folly, short-sightedness and dogmatism. And the days of large-scale, just to finish, of large-scale development on greenfield sites are over. They're not green, they're not sustainable, they do not protect or enhance biodiversity, they do not promote active travel, they're not compatible with this plan. And for that reason, we won't be voting for it, for sending it out in its current form without amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Was that right? Thank you, Chairman. I wish to put a laser light on one issue in the proposed local plan. I have the privilege to be a Thatcham ward councillor, and the proposal for a massive increase, now apparently only 1,500 houses, In Thatcham, this will have a massive impact on every resident in our town. We're apparently promised all sorts of goodies and planning gains, including possibly a new school, one that will be too small to even meet government regulations for the size of secondary schools. But that promise is in itself hollow. Every resident of Thatcham knows that Kennet is a good school, but every resident of Thatcham also knows that there is massive pressure on admissions, that its school site is shared with a public sports centre, and its original main building from 1957 is not fit for purpose, has next to no insulation and has no modern environmental standards. It can't even accommodate Thatcham's existing scholars. For a local plan to ignore this issue is appalling. It is a wasted opportunity. We need a purpose-designed, purpose-built educational campus with proper playing fields, provision its own gymnasium, its own swimming pool, and extensive playing fields. The initial idea already exists that it can be done. We can have an 1,800 entry school. We can have 600 in the sixth form, in an additional sixth form, and we can have a couple of primary schools there. And in return, the way that this can actually work on the ground is we can get the existing Kennet site and the existing Francis Bailey site turned into sustainable housing. What does sustainable mean? It means 5 minutes walk from the Broadway. It means 5 minutes walk from Thatcham Railway Station. That is sustainability. The point has just been made by our colleague there, Councillor Marsh, that it is not sustainable if you have to get in a car to go somewhere. If you actually have the housing where the school currently is, the inadequate school currently is, then you are actually achieving some sustainability. Because of the total lack of common sense, the lack of ambition, the casual nod to sustainability, I will be voting against the adoption of this plan. If we were a proactive council, we would not leave it to negotiations with developers with their own interests. We would be out there proactively resolving the community's needs. That is what the party in power is not particularly bothered about doing, as long as they've got a tick in the box for a given number of houses against a government plan. That is not good enough for West Berkshire, and it certainly isn't good enough for Thatcham.
Councillor Cotton.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be brief. I know time is going on. A lot of my points have been raised already, so I will not repeat them. This is the disadvantage of going later. Basically, I would like to say I have the greatest respect for Councillor Past. His experience, he could even be called, may I say, grandfather of the council. But as he said, this plan is still being worked on. This is what really concerns me. We're talking about more houses, but without any reference to infrastructure. There's missing information, there's lack of updates on infrastructure. As so eloquently put by Councillor Jeffrey, the secondary school, we only have one secondary school in the boundaries of Thatcham. And otherwise we have to go to Newbury. There's another unsustainable path. We should be able to educate our children within the area that they live. So I've said the updated infrastructure. Why do we need that? Because this is a major change. I feel it would be irresponsible of us to support this plan in its present form because of the missing information and update on actual lack of infrastructure. The administration is pushing this at a pace rather than care. I think it's, you act in haste and the community will regret for decades to come. Thank you.
Members, I'm conscious that we have been working for 2 hours now. I don't want to interrupt this debate, but I will call for a comfort break when we finish this. I hope we can last that long. Councillor Linden.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased of hearing about Pinsents, and I know my local fellow ward councillors also are pleased because we need the development in the right place at the right time. And I think I'm content in supporting this motion. As a council, we've been more successful than some of our neighbouring councils for making sure that we get the development in the right place. We've got more than a 5-year supply of land. And yes, we did have some problems a couple of plans ago that the inspectorate didn't like what we're doing. So I feel that we need to go ahead with this. We need to put the information, as I said, we're at the early stages of this, to get what is suitable for this district. And that's why I think we should just move ahead and support this motion. I know there are concerns in Thatcham and Newbury, but to be honest with you, we've done the work. We've been very successful in getting what we are looking for a steady build of necessary housing, rather than the excessive amount of housing that was being put on to us. So I'd urge members to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Linden. Councillor Martha Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to take this opportunity to raise awareness of the Newbury Development Plan. Such plans are referred to on page 209 of the document. Just to say that, that it's really important that we get as many Newbury residents as possible to contribute to this plan. They can access it on the Newbury Town Council website, and there's other information and posters around the town. The more input that we get from residents, the more valuable this document will be, which will eventually be part of the local plan when it is adopted. And it is very important that we get as many opinions as possible. For this reason, the deadline for the finishing of the consultation on the first phase of the plan has been extended till the end of January. So there's still plenty of opportunity for any residents listening to this debate or in this room to contribute to the plan, and I urge them to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Sumner surprised me, really. He said, well, we're not really qualified to make decisions. We're only councillors. We need to give it to the inspector and the officers know what they're doing. So why do we bother to make decisions about this, which rather surprised me. But also, you're going back to that little trap you thought you let us fall in 2 years ago, where you said, we used to say, Graham Jones, you say, well, you were in the working party, you were in the working group. And in this case, you say, well, you were in PAG and you were nodding and you all seemed happy. In a working group, you will nod, you will show some body language. It doesn't mean you agree with the plan, Councillor Sumner. It means you understand a point and you then come back to your group and then you get to a point saying, right, this is the plan. Do we like it? We weren't agreeing with you in PAG, Councillor Sumner, that we liked this plan. There are parts of it clearly that stand up to good scrutiny. But you know, you're doing it again. In the 70s, you just dumped thousands of houses in Thatcham with no infrastructure at all. And it is not a victory to suddenly say, oh, we were going to put 2,500 houses into Thatcham. Now we're only doing 1,500. How magnanimous of us. You're dumping houses into Thatcham again. And you will be too, Councillor Water. And I'll go to doorsteps and tell them you've done it, because you won't give it the infrastructure. Do you know what we did in the 90s and the 2000s, the early 2000s? We caught up with infrastructure. The Hennick-Worthy sports field, the swimming pool, at Kennett School, we caught up with the infrastructure you didn't do in the 70s, 80s, because you don't remember that now, but you're doing the same thing again. Thatcham has become your dumping ground, and it's a dumping ground again in this plan. So I'll stand up for Thatcham, as Councillor Owen Jeffrey will, and this group will. And finally, you're going to get this through tonight, because some dogma about you says this has got to be done as soon as possible. We have time to delay this, but you won't do it. And then I'll say this to you. We mentioned the election coming up. We mentioned that actually you might lose, and you sit there and you smile and you chortle and you huff, oh, you guffaw at the, oh, how impossible it is that you might lose in May.
That's what we were doing in 2005. We've been there. We've been there. You can smile, you can sneer, you can smirk, but I'm afraid you're coming towards the end of your time. You're coming towards the end of your time, and you're doing to the people of Thatcham in particular and Newbury and the district as much damage, it seems to me, as you can before you're thrown out. Not good enough.
Councillor Abs.
I'll wait for the applause to go down. Yeah, thanks very much. I don't really have, I wasn't intending to originally speak tonight because there were so many others doing it already. But I was kind of motivated by David's speech, to be honest. Thank you for that. And Sandalford. It is, I mean, I go around my ward, which is, Wash Common, which includes Sandalford a lot. And pretty much nobody wants any more development up there. And we've left a site there, even after the inspector has said that they can be separated. So we actually had an opportunity to go, the inspector said we don't need to connect the two anymore. Can we get rid of one then? About 500 homes we're talking about. Can we fit them somewhere else? Well, tonight we've heard that the windfall that's being used, the Windberg calculation, is very conservative. I think we can name at least 2 sites that seem to have any housing allocated to them, which could easily have 500 homes associated with them. So I think if I can see some of these things, then guess what? People like Not Say No to Sandalford will easily see these things. When they do it, they won't be talking to us anymore because you rejected the amendment about us having a final look at the feedback before we do anything. Now it's going to go straight to the inspector. Now it's out of our control. It's one of the reasons it wasn't political. It was simple. Let's have a look at the feedback before it goes off. But no, here we are, stuck where we are. They also think we're always stuck in this major development scenario as well. And I don't know if my colleagues agree with me or not on this one, but I've always wanted to look at West Berkshire as a whole. What do the villages need? What's the smaller locations need? Are they struggling to make themselves viable? It's so easy to kind of pick up once you start talking to parishes and the local places. What do you need to make yourselves more viable? We could have integrated that into the plan quite easily as well, but we're not doing any of those type of things. Not that I can see in any detail anyway. So that's really all I wanted to say. I think because of the way it's gone this evening, you'll get it through. It sounds like you will anyway. But that, some of the aspects are great. The green stuff I love as well. But I think by having them there, we have loaded up that there'll be significant more feedback in the Reg 19 stage which now have less control on, that will come to bite us in our bottoms. Thank you very much.
Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just want to focus on some of the positive things in the plan. I think we've heard a lot of reasons why people aren't happy with it, particularly to draw attention to SP5, responding to climate change, and DM4, building sustainable homes and businesses. We took the advice of a company called Bioregional, who had worked with other local authorities, and were able to advise us that we could push further on our carbon targets because other councils were doing that, and they were satisfied that an inspector would be happy with that approach. So I welcome that. I think that's a great thing that we're doing. They said to us that the government are not going far and fast enough on their carbon reduction targets, and to their mind that gave us as a local authority the wriggle room to be much more robust when it comes to carbon. So I particularly welcome those policies. I also welcome the policy about housing type and mix. Members of Western Area Planning Committee will know that I've often gone on in the past about the lack of small homes, both for rent and for purchase. We do have an elderly population who want to downsize. We have young adults who want to stay in the area, and not having enough small homes means that causes problems for them. They're also not affordable, and in the current climate, if you have a larger house, it obviously costs more to heat it as well. So there are many reasons why we need smaller homes, and I welcome the fact that this policy is going to put more emphasis on us having more smaller homes in the future. We have a strategic housing market assessment that says that we should have targets for 1 and 2 bedroom homes, and we've never managed to keep up with this. This is going to hold our feet to the fire even more, which I think is very good. I would just say that there is a certain irony that hangs over all of these decisions about planning. We had a recent application at Western Area Planning Committee where we have policies to protect the AONB, we have policies to protect woodland, but we still decided, and only 2 of us voted against this, to allow a horse rider to go ahead with a planning application when he already had a different planning application and had cut down priority woodland. So even though we have plans about the AONB and woodland, those things just seem to go out of the window. So whatever happens this evening, we need to be very mindful of the fact that we don't often take the correct weight for these policies and we don't enforce things properly either. We haven't got enough enforcement officers. And even the North Wessex Downs AONB in their annual review, they list that Lambourne application as their first and major disappointment. And only 2 members of WAP bothered to vote against it and bothered to vote against the fact that priority woodland had been cut down. So I just want to take this opportunity to raise that. We have to take notice. We are 75% AONB and those policies around that and biodiversity need to be respected. We can't just say, oh, it's a horse trainer, we're a horse training area, it's good for the economy, because quite frankly, a lot of the jobs in those yards are not good, they're badly paid, the accommodation is rubbish and the hours are long. So I don't buy the argument that things like that are good for the economy locally, and we shouldn't be kowtowing to individuals who threaten to take their business away from the area if we don't agree with them. So I would say, as we go forward, let us respect these policies if they go forward tonight. Let us talk to the community about why we have those policies. Let's celebrate the things around housing, biodiversity, net gain and climate. And let us hope ultimately that the government come forward with better policies, because our hands are tied. We're always told by officers, you can't do more on climate, you can't do more on biodiversity net gain, because if you enforce that on a developer, then we will go to an appeal and we will lose. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we need the government to be more robust on things like climate change, because we face an emergency and we need to be doing more. So I welcome what we're doing now, but I don't think it's anywhere near enough. And we need to keep pushing on these things about climate change and the natural environment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hiri Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm disappointed but not surprised at the behaviour of the Liberal Democrats this evening. I think it's entirely predictable. I think we need to remember why we're here. We're here to discuss, to vote for this plan to go for final consultation. People will have ample opportunity during the 6-week further consultation period to make their views known. And I would remind members that if we don't have a sound local plan, and we've always prided ourselves on being a plan-led authority, we will be exposing all of the residents that we represent to wholesale development across the whole of the district by developers who will win planning applications on appeal. I was surprised that Councillor Abbs said we should look at West Berkshire as a whole, because we have a settlement hierarchy for villages, and villages, including my own in Cheveley, will be taking 17 houses and they are included as part of this plan. So I think a lot of people are ill-informed or and are making comments that if they were better informed or had read the current local plan, would not be making them. I think there's been a lot of parochial comment this evening, Chairman, which is unnecessary. We should be looking at this plan as a district as a whole, not at our own local patches. And as much as I admire Councillor Brooks's bravura performances, I think we ought to give him the council equivalent to an Oscar for the performances he gives us that entertain us during these meetings. I think he's wrong in saying that the members of the planning advisory group, his colleagues might say something, but they might make a comment, but they disagree in the meeting. That is not necessarily the case. We have had a very collaborative working relationship with cross-party through all the years that I've sat on the planning advisory group, and that's from 2007, along with Councillor Law. And it is always the same. They agree in private, but they disagree in public. And as far as I'm concerned, Chairman, what we've heard tonight are the opening shots of the Liberal Democrat campaign. It's been politically motivated, and I would like, if I was in the chamber, ask for the motion to be put. Thank you, Chairman.
And Councillor Cole, Councillor Law.
Thank you, Chairman. Oh, apologies. I had asked.
Do you want him or me?
If you don't mind, I will stand, but I'll stand down here if you don't mind. Chairman, fellow councillors, members of the public are watching. I've quite a sense of deja vu here. I was responsible back in 2010 and then again in 2015 for bringing the components of the current plan, the core strategy and the housing allocations DPD to similar meetings as we're having tonight. Now, as far as the current plan is concerned, as Councillor Cole has just said, I have been on the planning advisory group for the last 4 or 5 years, working cross-party, I stress that, looking at the various reports that I'm surprised, actually, particularly with Councillor Vickers when he says a number of the reports, the key reports, he hasn't seen. For example, I will go later on, I'll tell you the ones that were brought in detail to PIDE and when that happened and was reviewed, and most of the rest of them were in fact brought in summary format because that's the way we work, isn't it? We trust the officers to summarize properly. So let me put, so I've been around a bit on this, so much of what I'd like to say, I've probably said before when I've been standing here. So bear with me, those people who have heard it before. I'd like to put tonight's vote in context because I have in fact heard from both of the opposition parties that they're going to vote against this tonight. So what does that mean? Importantly, members, I'd like to say this report and vote tonight is not actually about housing or economic development. It's not even about gypsies and traveller sites. It's not about economic development, environmental protection, and many of the other policies that are in the document before you tonight. It's actually about democracy. And it's about democracy, and particularly it's about local democracy. My colleague, Councillor Cole, referred to it. We're a plan-led authority. It's about who controls and who manages the local development in West Berkshire for the next 17 years. Now, when you hear me talking about democracy, you might think, oh, that's the same as what the Liberal Democrats were talking about when their amendment. I heard lots of term democracy. I interpret it differently. I say, let's get on with it. Let's get on with the consultations, not delay. So is it going to be the people of West Berkshire via their elected councillor, or is it going to be a planning free-for-all led by the development industry? Now, I got to disagree with Councillor Abbs and Councillor Dillon when they said, this is the last opportunity to change the plan. No, it is not. We've got Reg 19 when you can come back and say whatever you want to say. It'll then go to the Secretary of State. It'll then be looked at, and it'll be looked at in a very, very intense public scrutiny led by an inspector at a public hearing. I've been through 2 of those. Councillor Vickers referred to them. They are pretty tough, and everybody who has anything to say, be it member of the public, be it a developer, be it officers, be it councillors, will have every opportunity to make their point to an inspector based on this document. So make no mistake, to vote against this tonight means depriving the public of one more consultation before it goes to the Secretary of State and then to that full-blown public hearing. Voting against, and this is quite clear from Regulation 19 and 20, voting against will mean we have to actually throw that plan out and start again. And what does that mean? 4 or 5 years of evidence collection, research, review and scrutiny all starts again. So what would, if we don't have a plan, what would that look like? Well, this plan tonight is about 27 sites, and it's about 8,500 to 9,000 houses.
1 minute, Councillor.
I've got to tell you, thank you. I got to tell you, that would not be the case if we vote this down tonight. This is no idle scaremongering. you will see the original, when we originally went out to ask for sites, the developers and landowners submitted almost 250 sites, not the 27. Adding all the houses that could be built, they came to over 30,000 houses. That's what we are going to expose the people of West Berkshire to if we vote this down tonight. And I'm not idle scaremongering, this isn't Project Fear. If you want an example of this, just look across the river at South Oxfordshire. There you will see planning chaos that ensued when a newly elected Liberal Democrat-led council turned down the local plan at a similar stage. I'd finally just like to say, Chairman, my great thanks to the officers in the policy development group, and in particular led by Brian Little. I'd like to recommend acceptance of this report and this plan. Thank you, Chairman.
I think that's my response to raise clarification, because I think he's been clearly told one thing.
Okay. Councillor Rams, just a point of personal clarification, I believe.
Well, indeed. Well, not just personal, because several of us, the shadow executive, were informed at the same time that we needed to be very careful. In fact, that we really shouldn't be doing feedback to the inspector directly, because it would somehow bring the council into disrepute. So I really would like to understand whether we can or we cannot now, please. Keep lying.
I don't know, it's procedural. Don't think I said that. I can't comment.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Councillor Law definitely intimated that we would have an opportunity ourselves, and the whole point of what Lee Dillon and myself said was this is the last opportunity for members to have an influence. Also, it goes to the inspector now and the public process, not to ourselves.
Can I just clarify what I meant? No, okay. Let's have the answer.
I think just to clarify, I've spoken to my planning colleagues, and I understand that ward members can attend and have attended the public examination.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Okay. Councillor Arda-Walter.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. And well, firstly, I'd like to start by saying how much I welcome, again, as many of us said, firstly, the very diligent and intense work that officers have completed, and indeed, as Councillor Culver said, the high emphasis on good environmental standards, the way in which we all benefit and start with the new world of biodiversity net gain obligations on developers, and many other good things in the report. I'd like, though, to focus really on Thatcham, and various members of opposition parties have alluded to this, and I would like to get my tuppence in as well. So starting with Councillor Dillon, you said that, I paraphrase, that there was a school promised in the initial plan based on 2,500 houses, and word to the effect of now we have 1,500 houses, and we don't really know what sort of school provision we're going to get. And I think you, Councillor Jeffrey, also built on the point. Well, I'm not a planner, gentlemen, but...
Sorry, point of order. I didn't say that, Councillor Arda-Walter. I didn't say a school was promised. I've got the written speech in front of me. I did not say that.
I apologise, Councillor Dillon, but the gist is, I definitely got the gist from you that school provision, or let me put this to Councillor Jeffrey, who spoke more recently, that school provision is uncertain and we need more school. So in one sense, I agree with you, Councillor Jeffrey. Kennet School is full. It actually has 1,900 pupils now, not 1,800. But absolutely, I think we're all Thatcham members are together in the view that secondary school provision, while excellent at Kennet, needs to be sustained for growth. The point which Councillor Dillon you did make was that because a earlier version of a plan with 2,500 homes included a stronger provision towards secondary school places, that this is not valid now because we only have 1,500 and there'll be less money. Well, yes, my point though is, as I'm sure we can all agree, with 1,500 houses, you need fewer spaces for school children than you would if there were 2,500. So these details I know will be gone into in far more detail than we can or should hear as members. And I look forward as a member to being involved in discussions with officers and, for example, the Kennet School Academy to develop the best plan, not only for the school, but for the children of the town. Another small item on infrastructure, which actually we've not touched on, I think is worth highlighting, is the provision for a GP surgery. Now, again, as we local members will know, GP provision in the town is inadequate. There have been long queues and building queues at surgeries, and I do welcome this. This definitely is a major benefit, which everybody will welcome. I'm certain of it. Councillor Marsh, you touched on, and again, I think you did too, Councillor Jeffrey, the car use of new housing developments, and it's undeniable that people who live in housing developments do have cars. Equally, though, I don't see many fewer cars in Wash Common or indeed in the middle of Newbury. Then the fact that people have fewer transport choices is something we collectively must work on, and I'm confident we'll work on. But you cannot logically just say if they weren't there, there would be this would not be as sustainable, unless, of course, you'd much rather there weren't any more people, and you did not want any more growth. You did not want houses for young people. Or people who cannot afford to live in the district, because as we, or certainly this party, and I believe the Liberal Democrats believe, that one has to balance the needs of future generations of children who are growing up and want to stay in the area, of carers for us slightly more elderly people who will need care going forward in the future. So growth in housing is essential.
1 minute, Councillor Ardell-Walton.
Councillor Brooks, you laid it on quite thick about how our days were numbered and how we, the Liberal Democrats, caught up with the infrastructure that the Conservatives didn't bother doing. I remember Dunstan Park being built, and in fact, I think several of us live there, and I don't recall much infrastructure from that, nor indeed from Kennet Heath. Both of those were planned by your party, and equally, the reason you were rejected by the voters, I'm fairly certain, had something to do with massive council tax increase, which was pushed through by the last Liberal Democrat administration. So I look forward to maintaining our position as Conservatives running this council. We believe in getting things done. And again, I do recommend this plan. Thank you.
Brief point of information, the Hennick Sports Centre.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We hear a great deal from our opposition members that they want to be involved in cross-party collaboration. And what a great opportunity, of course, this was on the local plan. Now, to be fair to the Greens, which is not a statement, to be fair, that I often say, but to be fair to them, back in July, when Councillor Marsh submitted a motion on fair tax, if you remember, we saw an opportunity to compromise and to tweak some of the wording to something that we on this side could support. Councillor Marsh was actually a perfect gentleman to work with on that. And I mean this sincerely, it was a really good example of both the Conservatives and the Greens putting aside some of the political bluster and finding some common ground. And I thought it was excellent. The story's not so good with the Lib Dems, Chairman. Tonight's just the latest example, I'm afraid. Back in March, you might remember we had a motion on water companies from the Greens. Now, sadly, and even the Lib Dems agree with this wasn't an example of putting aside the political bluster, but hey, we're all human. Became apparent during the meeting that the Lib Dems and the Conservatives could knock out a political compromise. And we did that on the night.
It wasn't a motion from the Greens, it was a public petition.
Oh, I'll correct the record, yeah. But during that debate, we, on the hoof, it was a really good example of just of spontaneous collaboration from the Lib Dems, and we knocked out a motion that we were in agreement with. 3 weeks later, what was the headline in those fake wee newspapers they stick through the letterboxes? It was literally fake news. Conservative sewage shame. Lib Dems fighting for your rivers. 3 weeks after we'd agreed a cross-party motion. And now to the local plan. The culmination of 5 years of hard work from officers and members of all parties on PAG. Councillor Brooks rather unkindly scolded Councillor Sumner for expecting some sort of cross-party agreement because they were on the working group. That's not the reason why we expected that, Councillor Brooks. The reason is because you said you would. Let me quote Councillor Tony Vickers from the Penny Post on the 24th of November, 1 week ago. The Liberal Democrats are broadly consistent with the district-wide policies in the local plan that will be asked to vote on next Thursday. We certainly won't be voting against the motion to publish it for the Regulation 19 consultation. And 5 days later, the correction after the dread after 5 years, the correction was, well, we will not be supporting it. Now, Councillor Sumner tells me that Councillor Vickers is a valued member of PAG, who has useful experience and perspectives and makes a constructive contribution. That's not a surprise to me to hear that, because whenever I've had dealings with him, I found the same. So I've got a lot of sympathy with him. But what happened in those 5 days, folks, I think we all know. He's had the old tap on the shoulder from upstairs saying, no, Tony, we're voting against this. We heard it from Councillor Brooks tonight. He wants to knock on doorsteps in Thatcham, slagging off Councillor Arda Walter. We heard it from them. They're saying the quiet part out loud. You're not supposed to give it away like that, folks. They were broadly content on the 24th of November, so a week ago, and certainly wouldn't be voting against. Well, tonight, opposition for opposition's sake, to trash 5 years of work for some perceived political advantage. That's why he's disappointed. That's why the residents of West Berkshire should be bitterly disappointed. They're brilliant for telling us how many homes they will build, by the way. Lib Dems pledged to build 380,000 homes per year. But not here. Not in our backyard, right? Somerset County Council, Lib Dem leader, that's Sir Ed Davey, by the way, in case you didn't know, announces plans for 1,000 zero carbon homes per year in Somerset. Not 1,500 over 17 years, 1,000 homes per year. Somerset can have that, but not here. No. Not in our backyard. No. Now, look, most of us in politics are aware of the Liberal Democrats' reputation for campaigning and the way they go about their business, right? We all are. Now, this is a party political comment, Chairman. It's not a personal comment, but some do say that they've got more faces than the town hall clock. Well, the reason why people think you've got some more faces than the town hall clock, it's because of stuff like this, folks. 24th of November, you certainly won't be voting against. 1st of December, we couldn't possibly support this for a million reasons. I mean, you really don't help yourselves. And I'm glad that you've laid it out so plainly for the residents of West Berkshire.
Thank you. Councillor Masters.
Thank you, Chairman. My apologies. Just as a point of information, I think we've had a very thorough debate. There's been a few occasions where it's been a little bit of a pantomime with some of the theatrics on all sides, but I think we've had a really good debate. And I would like to note to the chairman, I disappeared to the little boys' room during my group leader's speech, which I was aware of and fully approved. So I will be voting in this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Bridgman.
Chairman, thank you. Just want to make a couple of fairly minor points and then one fundamental. Councillor Martha Vickers refers to the Newbury Neighbourhood Plan, and I would certainly take this opportunity to encourage any of our communities to go down the road of developing a neighbourhood plan. You'll know that my parish, Stratfield Mortimer, brought the first one. Indeed, we're now on our we're drafting our second iteration. And I am fortunate in certain circumstances because of the neighbourhood development plan in the last iteration of the local plan, Mortimer is not being asked to take any housing, and because of the DEPZ and Burfield isn't being asked to take any housing. 2 points I want really to make though. Councillor Law makes reference to planning chaos in South Oxfordshire if you don't have a local plan. I just want to say yes, absolutely, but let's not forget Wokingham. Wokingham if you cross the border into Wokingham and see the amount of housing that's being built in Wokingham, we have to have a local plan. And what I really want to point out is that there has been mention of this being rushed, us taking decisions about Reg 19 in a rushed manner. We've been at this for the last 5 years. I looked up the Reg 18 consultation. The original one was dated November 2018. We've been here an awfully long time discussing and debating this. I would just like to see this put to bed. Let's move on. Let's get this before the inspectorate and get a local plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Richmond. Councillor Oloko. Have you finished dressing?
Thank you, Chairman. I kind of debated whether or not I wanted to say something, but I think I should because I feel I should. Now, I want to speak really because I want to separate process from content. Process is how you move forward. Process is what makes us civilized. And we agree a process. And I believe that a process has been agreed for this activity. And that process involved a cross-party group. So for me, that is part of the process that says, this is what we're going to do. And that group of people come together and present this to us. And what this recommendation here is, it's actually about process that says, thank you for the work you have done. We're now going to take it through another round of consultation and then take it through for independent examination. And we want to entrust that process with the executive director. That's what the recommendation says. That's what it says. That's the recommendation. Yeah, you're shaking your head, but it's black and white. That's what it says. It's a recommendation to do this. Now, political jousting is taking place here, which is quite disappointing, particularly because there's a cross-party group that's been involved in this process. And I've heard things like, yeah, we sit in there, but we don't agree. What the bloody hell are you doing sitting in there in the first case? If you're not going to agree. So that, for me, is an issue. Now, having studied this document, the first thing your first joust, if you like, is an amendment. Now the amendment is turned down. We now bring out this litany of issues. If you had these issues and you'd reviewed it, why did you just come up with an amendment that says, as long as you bring it back to the House for us to approve, it's fine, which is not. So for me, this talks to integrity of process. This talks to integrity of trusting that our colleagues should go and do this work. I don't know anything. I'm very new to this. Reg 18, Reg 19, PAG, all this. The key things are here is cross-party group. You go, you do this, and you bring it back. Now you've been part of this process, and you're now denying the content of the work you have done for political purposes, for grandstanding purposes. I'm supporting this, and I'm supporting it for the simple reason that it's about process. It's about taking it to the next stage of the activity. That's really all it's about. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Jones, I was going to raise a point of order during his speech, but I allowed him to finish. He said, why didn't we put down an amendment? But we were told by the monitoring officer that you couldn't put amendments to the local plan because it would negate the whole motion. Our amendment was on the processing of it. If we could have clarification from the monitoring officer that that's correct.
Thank you. Yes, advice was provided to all members that amendments under the current rules of the Constitution cannot be to negate the motion that's been moved, and any motion or amendment, therefore, that sought to change recommendations within the plan itself would have failed because the whole plan would then have failed due to all of the assessments, etc., supporting that. So that advice was given to members regarding details of any potential amendments.
Thank you. For that clarification. Thank you. Councillor Berwick. Excellent. Councillor Marino.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was actually quite disappointed when I saw this meeting was going to be at the same time as the football. However, I've been trying to desperately ignore my irate Spanish father's messages. It's probably a better idea that I was here rather than watching it. I'm not answering that like I didn't answer it on Twitter either. I wanted to briefly touch on Councillor Brooks's comments about working groups. I mean, one of the first things I remember doing as an elected member, was chairing a working group of which Councillor Brooks was a part of, and I felt that those meetings were actually quite productive. So I just wanted to say how sad I was to hear his comments about working groups earlier.
Thank you. See no further hands, so can I go to Councillor Wollaston, please, who seconded the motion?
Thank you, Chairman. I've sat on the Planning Advisory Group, which has considered the draft local plan for the last 6 months, since I became policyholder for housing. Can I firstly join other comments in congratulating Brian Little and his team for a monumental effort to get to this stage. Hopefully, very few weeks to get to recharge batteries for you all before the public consultation process starts. For the benefit of the public, the PAG comprises officers and 10 councillors. 6 Conservatives, because it was agreed that Councillor Hilary Cole's background knowledge was helpful. 3 Liberal Democrats, led by Councillor Tony Vickers, their planning lead member, and Councillor Calvert, the leader of the Greens. I have to say it's been a very pleasant experience. That is, if you ignore the massive packages of electronic papers, 1,600 pages, I think, the worst. With the consensus that we should work together to ensure that we are a plan-led local authority and avoid the Wild West successes of a developer free-for-all. I'm therefore so disappointed that the party opposite, despite the high level of their involvement in the process, should backtrack for what is clearly political opportunism. We have planning issues in most of our wards. In my case, representing Lambourne, it is Membury Industrial Estate, which is a hark back to be a World War II airfield, which has grown organically with the encouragement of the planning team to become an eyesore and causing major traffic issues on the B4000. As HGV movements have doubled in the last 3 years, and in the last 2 weeks alone, there have been 2 major accidents, thankfully with no loss of life. Additional sites there have been allocated, and whilst my residents don't like it, I must accept that we have a major shortage of industrial and commercial sites for allocation, and with great reluctance can see the need, albeit I want to see some major constraints on vehicle movements and traffic speeds. That is a grown-up approach to the need to provide sites in West Berkshire, which is seriously constrained by the AONB, the impact of the DEPZ, and of course flood risk from the Kennet. The same is true of our housing need, particularly for affordable housing, so that the younger generations can afford to live and work here to the benefit of the economy of West Berkshire as a whole. This year, we are on track to produce over 200 affordable housing units, but with cost of living and energy issues, the demand on our housing list is bound to grow. Small schemes of 10 or 20 homes will go some way to meet the need, but in reality, we need large developments, such as Sandalford, North Newbury, Calcott, and yes, North East Thatcham, to meet the demand over the plan period up to 2039. The last might not be politically desirable for the party opposite, but we are in the real world. I sincerely hope that we could have had a cross-party agreement to approve this motion for the benefit of the whole of West Berkshire, or if there's too much to ask the opposition to abstain rather than oppose it. I will be voting for this motion.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I believe Councillor Wollaston was accusing us of saying one thing in the Planning Advisory Group and another thing here. I, for one, did speak several times against the housing allocation North East Thatcham and indeed in Field. And I do recollect Councillor Wollaston speaking against those employment allocations in his own ward. So I think his accusations of hypocrisy are completely unfounded.
Councillor Sumner.
Chairman, thank you. Members, thank you for, I think what we would call a healthy debate. Thank you for the points that have been raised, and thank you to my colleagues for your support. It is appreciated by me, and it is appreciated, I know, by officers. I just wanted to state a few points for clarification, Chairman, if I may. Executive Director for Place starts on the 6th of March. That's well within the period before the plan is due to go to the inspector. That's just there for a fact. Councillor Barnett, you made some points earlier on. A plea, sir, to make sure you repeat them in the Regulation 19 process, because that's the sort of feedback that needs to come in. Pinson's Lane was mentioned and the removal of it. Councillor Macro, you were the one that actually proposed that it came out.
I think that deserves recognition. There was a mention earlier on about us.
Point of order, Chairman. This is stuff that's gone on in PAG, is it, which is a confidential meeting?
No, this is stuff that's been mentioned this evening, I think. There was a mention earlier on about being more proactive and dialing down the negotiation. I paraphrased the sentence that was given. Negotiation with developers is proactive. Negotiation prior to applications coming in is exactly what we should be doing. We should be resolving the issues before applications come in and have to go through the committee process. That's exactly what being proactive is and exactly what we're doing. We don't have a plan. We won't be proactive or negotiating. We will be done to, not done with. And I think I made that point very clear at the start. There was a question over sustainability. I think the question was, what is it? Well, if you look at SP 17, it's clearly detailed in page 64 of the local plan. Detailed what sustainability is. And one point that I would make within that sustainability charter, there are references to in there to will do or will be, not should be, not should do, not could do. This is us being forthright, putting the information out there, telling our developers what we expect them to do. They will do this, they will achieve. And I take Councillor Culver's points earlier on about making sure that they do what they say they're going to do. You're absolutely right. Chairman, members, this plan is in a stage ready to be taken forward. It needs to go out to consultation. It needs West Berkshire to comment on where we are now. If there are major modifications that come forward, it will come back to us. It needs to go to the inspector. And I think, to come back to my colleague, Councillor Brooks over the other side, if this fly is really getting on my wick. You quoted me as dumbing down our position as members, whether we're qualified. That was a repeat of one of your colleagues' statements to me. So with respect, sir, I push it back. It was a repeat of a statement that came this way. Chairman, I've got nothing else to say. I thank everybody, apart from this fly. And is it wearing the yellow badge? And I will absolutely be looking for everybody to support this plan going forward. Thank you.
Members, as has been said, we've had a very full and an open debate. It is now time to move to a vote, please.
Thank you, members. Can I please ask all members in favour of the recommendation to please raise their hands? Thank you. I have 21. All those opposed? 18 against. That means the proposal has, apologies. And so that's 17 against and 1 abstention. So that proposal has been carried.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Pask.
Sorry, just a bit of it's not a point of order, it's a statement. Councillor Dillon, I wish you a speedy recovery. The fact that for the very first time in my life, I voted in the same way as the Liberal Democrats. I'm sorry, I'm not going to rush over and join you, so don't build your hopes up.
I can't see you all in the chamber, Councillor Pask, so the hands are a mystery to me.
Thank you very much, members. That was a very positive debate, I think, and we have concluded it. Can I call for a 10-minute comfort break? Literally 10 minutes. Members, moving to item 19 on our agenda. We have 3 notices of motion. The motions are set out on page 679 in the agenda pack. I need to advise you that in accordance with rule 4.9.4, you have agreed to accept an urgent motion submitted by Councillor Graham Bridgman, motion C, as circulated prior to the meeting and published on the website. As the motion to be moved will rescind a decision made by council within the preceding 6 months, in accordance with rule 4.16.1, notice has been given under the rule and has been signed by at least 1/4 of all members of council. So I plan to reorder the motions, and the urgent motion C will be considered first. A, because it's urgent, B, because I believe it's very short. Again, could we be as succinct as possible during these motion debates? So we'll look at first at motion C. Can I invite Councillor Graham Bridgman to formally move that motion, please?
So moved, Chairman.
Councillor Moore, do I understand you're seconding?
I will second, thank you. Yes, I don't need to reserve my right.
You don't need to reserve your right, in which case you will speak after the introduction of the motion from Councillor Bridgman.
Chairman, very straightforward motion. I think it says what it, does what it says on the tin. I want to thank all members of the Constitution Task Group, including members opposite, for joining with me in bringing this motion before you. Has been signed by a number of members, including members within the task group, and I thank them for that as well. I'm happy to take questions, but I think it basically explains itself, so I'm not going to speak to it very much.
Councillor Moore.
I'm happy to confirm that the task group, we agreed, and I'll say it openly here that we agreed within the task group, just for the avoidance of doubt.
Inconsistent.
Councillor Moore, you wanted to speak.
I'm going to be as brief as Councillor Bridgman. Nothing more to say if there's no questions.
In which case, if there's no more comments from the floor, can we move to a vote on this motion C, please?
Yeah, I don't know whether technically, if you go to the close of debate.
I'm happy to close the debate there and move to the vote. Thank you.
I realised that.
Thank you, Chairman. So can I therefore please ask all members in favour of the motion to please raise their hands? Any opposed or abstaining? I can confirm, Chairman, that that motion has been carried.
Thank you very much, members. Can we move then to motion A in your agenda? Submitted in the name of Councillor Jeff Brooks.
I'd be pleased to move the motion, Chairman.
Do we have a second?
Can I just clarify, is it the motion with the amendments currently being displayed?
Yes, for the avoidance of doubt,
The
you're
alterations?
bringing them up, are you? Yeah. So I'm pleased that the leader came to me and suggested this amendment. I'm very pleased to take it. The motion as amended is before us now, and that's the one I'll be moving, Chairman.
Thank you.
And I'm delighted that Councillor Brooks has agreed to do that, and I will be very happy to second this motion.
Councillor Brooks, would you care to?
Thank you very much. We've got this jewel of a facility within our district. The Watermill Theatre is not a theatre that just takes shows and plays and musicals that go around the country. They do some of that, but they're a producing theatre. In fact, they're probably in the southeast or south of England. The only other producing theatre outside of London will be Chichester. We're very fortunate to have the Watermill within our district. We really are. You may have not know or have forgotten that they produced a version of Stephen Sondheim's Sweeney Todd that ended up just off Broadway, won a Tony Award. That's the quality of the theatre we have here. And really impacted badly by this decision by the Arts Council England. So I went to see Paul Hart, who's the creative director there, on Monday morning and said, would this motion, unamended, but I'll come back to that, help you? Because if it wouldn't, I'm going to pull it. Because this should not become, and don't you start laughing, this should not become a political football. We all want this facility to do well. Okay, so we need to now support them as a council. I acknowledge when the Councillor Doherty came to me and said, well, the MP, Laura Farris, has already done some work in this. I acknowledge that. But we haven't put our support behind the Watermill Theatre. We should also be asking other MPs to put their support behind it because their residents will enjoy that facility as well. And we should also see what we can do, perhaps assisting them with the way they put their bid in to the Arts Council England. What can we do? Because the motion tells us how their outreach programme involves thousands of people across the district. They're working with young people, teenagers, is tremendous. And that's another reason we've got to support them in the best way we can. Now, I don't mean, Councillor McKinnon, that's necessarily money. In case you shudder a bit there, we did have to stop giving them grants some years ago. But what practical support can we give them? And I think the leader will amplify the points I'm making here. So I'm really hoping for a unanimous support in favour of this. How do we help the Watermill Theatre? This is not a small amount of money. This is about 14% actually of their operating costs. I think it says revenue in there, but Paul said that's pretty much 14% of my operating costs. So do we want that quality? Do we want that national recognition for a theatre in our district? We want that quality to be maintained. And we want all those outreach programs to carry on. And this motion in some small way will assist. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty, do you wish to speak now?
Councillor Brooks, my life and education both do learn me. Othello. Othello was the last production that I saw at the Watermill. We are so lucky, I am so lucky, to have in my own back garden such a unique rural setting and venue. 200 seats in a very small, intimate setting, and you get to actually be right next to those actors on stage. We do need to support them, and I'm really glad that Councillor Brooks brought this before you this evening. I'm also really pleased with the work that our MP Laura Farris has done. And there are things that we can do. Don't worry, Councillor McKinnon, I'm perfectly aware of council budgets, but we can each and every one of us support the Watermill Theatre by actually going. So actually by purchasing tickets and taking our families. If you haven't been, it is a really unique experience. So I would encourage everybody in the room to think about, I think it's pantomime season coming up.
Well, no,
I believe that pantomime might be on, so it might be you're taking the grandchildren. I also actually, Councillor Brooks said earlier around the Friends of the Watermill Theatre. I know Councillor Cole has been the friend of a Watermill Theatre for many years, and actually that's something that I need to look at because I go along, but I haven't looked at those options. So there are those practical options. Councillor Bridgman and I have also been talking around how do they embed themselves into the community, and we know that through the Health and Wellbeing Board work, there's a lot around social prescribing and what is it that potentially their business plan needs to look at to actually enable them to take forward becoming sustainable in their own rights, because as Councillor Brooks said, 14% funding cut effectively to them is a huge amount for them to recover. So we need to all look at what we can do and consider what practical options. And I think there is actually on their website already, buy our tickets, become our friends, donate. And I would encourage every member to get that message out there and get that out to the communities that you all work within, because you all have a lot of people that probably enjoy this facility and just need to recognise how they can support them. So I'm really happy that tonight, having gone through 3 hours of of debate and of politics, that we are not doing that this evening with this particular one. And I think we can all agree, without going through the motions, that this is the right thing for us to be doing as a council. So thank you.
Councillor Masters.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome this motion brought by Councillor Brooks and supported by the ruling group. As a fellow ward member with the leader, Councillor Doherty, it is an extremely valuable resource and source of entertainment and great pleasure for many people across not just Newbury, but West Berkshire and many miles in every direction. So I think we should get behind this, and I welcome and support this motion.
Okay. Councillor Marino.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I wasn't originally going to speak, although I am very supportive of the motion. Just wanted to say, in line with some of the interests that were declared at the start about this motion, now that I saw it on the screen, my employer's name is now there directly. It's obviously in my direct register of interest, but I'm also in my role day to day. I'm also involved in responding to such kind of correspondence. So I just thought I'd throw that out there just so that everyone's aware.
Thank you. Are there any other contributions?
Yeah, Councillor Jones, if I may.
Yes, sorry. Please go ahead, Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to talk actually from the perspective of a parent with young children in the district. I've been up to the water mills up there at the summer. Pre-show meals are great as well, Councillor Doherty, so buy their tickets and get the meals as well. But also, we as a Lib Dem group have used it before as an external training venue. So it offers the community so much more, and what it offers our children locally. And I was at school in St Vinians, and every year us as local school children would go to the Watermill Theatre to watch the local pantomime, and it's that local connection that enables children to go and experience the theatre more now than ever. Our local school has arranged a pantomime. They asked for voluntary contributions during a cost of living crisis. They didn't come forward. So now there's a conversation about, can the school afford to put that pantomime, afford to put the trip on for the children? If it wasn't a local theatre like the Watermill, you can absolutely guarantee the answer would have been no. You can't afford to take the children up to London to watch the shows. They're too expensive. So it's crucial that we maintain this asset in West Berkshire so that our local children, as well as fee-paying adults, but our local children can get to experience the magic of theatre and the opportunities that brings to them, whether that be in acting or stage directing or behind the scenes doing arts and crafts and lighting. There's a whole economy out there around the theatre, and we're extremely lucky to have that here in West Berkshire, and long may it continue.
Thank you. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to follow up something that Councillor Dillon's just said, we're doing our bit on this side to support the Watermill. We will be there, not tomorrow, but Friday week for our Christmas dinner. And we've been doing that for a number, apart from COVID, we've been doing that since at least 2015 and probably before, because I know Councillor Hilary Cole has been organising lots of things. So I would say everyone, use the facilities, go to the theatre, use the restaurant, even if you don't eat and watch. Restaurant's superb as well. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you. All right. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm not going to say that I go there even more regularly than that. That would be silly. But one thing I think we might be able to do, and I am definitely supporting this motion, of course, because I go there with my family a lot. It is called the Watermill. So can we send our team out there of alternate engineers, the Adrian Slaughters and so on? Can they help them in some way to address their costs? Now, I don't mean by us paying for it, but to actually at least advise them on what the options are, assuming they haven't looked at it already. I'd just like to let us do some practical things that are not cost effective, don't cost us anything to start with, and see if we can help in some way. Okay, thanks. Bye.
So, right, Councillor, I think there are more contributions. Councillor Brooks, would you like to conclude?
Sorry, Chairman. I think technically we are moved to the relevant portfolio holder, which I think would be Councillor Howard Wollaston, if he wishes to speak before the move of the motion.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm of course wholly supportive of this, and I'm very pleased it's cross-party. I too have been to the Watermill on a number of occasions and can highly recommend it.
Now, Councillor Brooks.
Well, it nearly got political because we mentioned that we went there for training. You mentioned we went there for Christmas dinners. You know, we actually went there for training in public speaking and theatrical presentation. Maybe that's where, you know, some of it came from. So let's not, my dame is a legend in her own lunchtime, I can tell you that, Councillor Masters. So let us not go on too long now. The night is getting late, but let us therefore, I beseech you, we happy few, we band of brothers and sisters, let us now vote to help the Watermill. Over to you.
I don't need to say anything now, do I? Yes, can we move to a vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please ask all members in favour of this motion to now raise their hands? Now we'll check any against or abstentions. No, that is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, so we now move to the last motion, motion B. There was an alteration to this motion, which was emailed to all members on the 4th of October 22. That's what it says here. I'm sure I didn't think, did I? November. Recently.
Yesterday, today, yeah.
Can I invite Councillor Abbs to move the motion with minor alterations?
Yeah, please move the motion down in my name. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder?
Second, question, is this a matter for here for this? Are we going to debate this tonight here?
No. However, we still need to know if it's seconded. No, the council will not debate the motion this evening. In accordance with the normal procedure, or we refer this to the executive, as all of the points in the proposal are executive functions. A report will be considered at the executive, and the outcome of that will be reported to the council. Councillor Abbs will be kept fully informed, and he will be invited to attend the meeting of the executive where the item is considered. Councillor, would you like to speak to the motion for up to 3 minutes, please?
Yes, thanks very much. Look, as we've heard, this insulation motion will be referred to the next EAG, the Environmental Advisory Groups, for those that are listening, once the officers have had a chance to flesh out the details. Hopefully, it allows us to get to a solution back to the exec for approval and be up and running to have an effect, hopefully, before next winter. It has already been discussed at the EAG once, and I'd like to say thanks to officers who suggested it first, and to Councillor Ardar Walters for allowing it to happen with such expediency as it did. We just happened to have one meeting coming up. I'd like to say another thanks to those same officers, and again to Steve Ardar Walters, but also to Steve Masters, who met with me after the EAG, as we'd agreed at EAG, to actually hammer out the amendments that are now on the piece of paper before us. So the motion seems to have some cross-party support, which I'm hoping will continue as it turns from idea to plan and then delivery. So first, I'll explain why I brought the motion. To do that, I think we need to understand the scale. According to what I can find from ONS and other sources, the following percentages of homes have different EPC ratings for our area. G, we have about 4 or 5%. F, we have 5 or 6%. E, we have about 19%. And D, a very high 39%. So a huge number of homes. And just FYI, every percentage means around 630 homes in West Berkshire. So we're talking a problem of tens of thousands of homes that we are potentially going to try and address. Looking further into the trends, we also see a difference between social housing and private housing. The private housing having a small uptick in the last few years, social housing having plateaued. So we can address that with this motion as well slightly. So why do we need the motion? The scale of the problem demands a large, long-term scheme to solve it. Funding is hard to find at the moment. We've already heard that a lot this evening. Funding we manage on our timescales is even harder. We need something we can fund from different channels, be that government grants as a source, whether it's be a West Berkshire insulation bond taking some, building on what we've done before. Trusts like Green and whoever else making whatever contributions they can make whenever they can make. We're looking at a multi-million-pound project over the long term that if we don't find innovative ways to fund it, is just not going to happen. This business of moving to net zero for the district is hard. I think we established that just the other week. So having a program that allows us to make a move on the dial there has got to be well worth it.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Thank you. We have a chance via this motion to make a substantial change to move against CO2 emissions, as I indicated, because a poor insulation leads to higher CO2 emissions. They are linked. We also have to tackle, as a byproduct, one of the core cost of living issues, i.e. keeping warm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You've heard how that will be processed, so we'll proceed on that as you would. Finally, members, item 20 is members' questions. As normal, I will ask the portfolio holder to answer the questions in order. And you'll have a chance for a supplementary, which must be relevant to the answer. So can we move to question A, Councillor Jeremy Cottam, to be answered by Councillor Tom Marino.
Thank you, Councillor Cottam, for your question. Yes, all risk registers have been recently reviewed. In accordance with the Council's risk management policy, risks are identified and managed on an ongoing basis, and all causes of risk linked to the Council's objectives are taken into consideration. These are formally reported as part of updated risk registers on a quarterly basis. With regards to your specific comments about managing the impacts of climate events, the Council did declare a climate emergency in 2019, and mitigation actions are coordinated through our Environment Strategy 2020 to 2030. Regular updates are provided about the delivery of the strategy. Any overarching risk linked to the strategy is recorded on the Environment Department's Service Risk Register, and this risk is also escalated on the Place Directorate's Risk Register. Other environmental risks are managed by the Council services. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that answer. I have to admit a question was prompted by a parish councillor at a governance and ethics meeting and saying, is this council making sure it's very aware of, for example, the torrential rain, the drought, the torrential rain, and the consequences of these on the environment and on our community. So I think my second question here, or not second question, supplementary, is what about identifying those type of issues and bringing them forward in the risk register, not when they happen, but try and maybe, like we do monitor certain things within G&E, could we maybe add that to the list of things that is on there and giving it a priority and an importance not above, but equal to all the other risks that this council, this community is subject to?
Thanks for that. I mean, it is my understanding that the officers involved do take comments made at G&E, and I know there are regularly different comments made about specific risks. I know that Councillor Abbs raised a lot of COVID-related risk things, obviously when we're in the middle of the pandemic. However, if there are any specific risks you feel that aren't being addressed, or anyone feels they're not being addressed, feel free to email them to me. I'm happy to discuss them with relevant officers and with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cottam. A question from Councillor Abbs. Councillor Bridgman, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your question. Now, as you will know, the question of defibrillator provision was the subject of a report that went to Health and Wellbeing Board in May. I've looked at what the recommendations in that report were and what's happened since. So just to identify those various actions. Firstly, one of the actions was to remind members, and that happened, that they're able to use their members' community bids to apply for funding for defibs. And indeed, just to comment outside the term of that report, that there have actually been 5 such bids so far during the term of this council. Broader members bid in 2019-20. Councillors Hooker and McKinnon brought bids in 2021, 21-22, and Councillors Pascoe and Doherty the round earlier this year. And there is actually another bid in the current round, but obviously that's confidential at the moment. The second thing that officers took on board was to signpost town and parish councils to various sources of funding for public access defibrillators. They also took the opportunity to remind town and parish councils of the need to undertake regular maintenance checks of defibs and indeed of the pads and everything else. Next, they confirmed, because this was a question that was raised in the report and indeed raised at Health and Wellbeing, that first aid training, including using defibrillators, is being provided in schools as part of the curriculum. And finally, the encouragement was, and there was publicity around this in June, to download the Save a Life app, which identifies where defibs are and has a whole load of, it's a very useful app. It has a whole load of other stuff about health and how to use a defib and what to do in an emergency, and indeed has a 999 button. And I'd also point any members who are interested to, there's a defibfinder.uk website, which is based on the same information, but it's an easier way of targeting rather than through an app if you're looking on a PC. So in terms of gaps in provision, fundamentally what the Health and Wellbeing Board were saying and agreeing was that the best place for this conversation is with the town and parish councils in conjunction with their local communities to see where they are best placed to identify gaps in provision. And I am indeed pleased that since the report, rural areas of the district are coming forward, because that was one of the things that the report identified, that we've got a reasonable provision in urban areas, but there are some gaps in rurality. And Upper Basildon had identified a defib since the report. That was listed as one of the places that didn't have one. That now identifies where a defib is in Upper Basildon. And Lower Basildon Parish Report indicated that one would be installed once a suitable site can be found. So fundamentally, I would encourage all members to support their communities. And where defibs are installed, we're also encouraging everyone to ensure, and this was part of the engagement with the towns and parishes, to make sure they are both registered and advertised so that the community knows where they are. Without having to go on an app, you should know where in your community defib is. You have a supplementary.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good to know there's some activity going on. And I think I'm hearing you're saying that you basically, the plans for filling the gaps are really to push it out to local councils, to local parishes and so on, which I don't disagree with. My only question would be, have we thought about the type of tools that are actually going to need to be able to do that? I mean, it's great at one level, but it's far easier if you actually take the position of all the existing ones, plop some rings around them, and that will identify for you where the gaps are straight away. And therefore we can go to the parishes saying, actually, do you realise you've got this and this and this gap? And then we can work about the funding later, but it's knowledge of where the gaps are, because it's no good me having the app in my hand when I press the button and actually there's not one near me. So are we doing some tool availability or something to help them with that process of finding the gaps?
Well, indeed, and if you read the report, you'll see that a number of rural locations were identified as being a gap, and then there's been engagement. Now, I will take up with officers too. I didn't ask the specific question, what communication did you have with those parishes? Because they're basically parishes, because they are, as I say, in the rural area. But I'm happy to take that away. And
I think we're both quite passionate about it, Graham. So thanks.
Thank you. Question C is from Councillor Dillon for Richard Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Dillon, for your question. LRA LRIE is included in the proposed submission version of the local plan, now approved. Policies SP1, SP3, SP20, DM32, and Table 18 of Appendix 4 designate employment areas. Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question D is from Councillor Barnett, also for Councillor Sumner.
Here we go again. Councillor Barnett, thank you for your question. I can't speak for developers' actions, but where there is a suspected breach of any planning condition, it can be reported to the planning enforcement team for investigation. And I know you attended the planning enforcement training just the other day. Where a breach is identified, the team will take the appropriate action. Often these matters are resolved amicably through communications with the developer concerned. Do you have a supplementary?
Well, Councillor Sumner, I'm afraid I have, and well, thanks for that answer. I think that the sad thing about it, Councillor Sumner, is that it's happening time and time again. The carnival at the racecourse, a good example, continually fluting the conditions that were imposed on them. Even the application that I mentioned early on tonight, Petitions Lane, and even Sterling Cables in Kings Road. It's sad, but it's happening. But residents report it, I report it, and action is taken. And these developers or these agents, they just flout it and
Councillor,
continue.
do you have a question?
Sorry. Well, apologies. Sorry. We take note of what you're saying, Councillor Sumner, but it's going to happen again. Sorry about that.
Okay, not really a question, but all I can say is that, again, from the training you attended, you know the changes that have been put through, the plan that is now on the website. I won't deny that enforcement has been an area of concern for a while, a good while, but it is something that we are dedicated to addressing. We've got 3 officers at the moment that are doing a sterling job. They have a large area to cover. We are reliant on information coming in. When we get that information, we need to act on it. I take your point.
Thank you, councillors. Can we move to question E? Councillor Culver for Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Councillor Culver, for your question. Councillor Culver, I'm sure you're very aware that the council strategy currently has a line in there, a priority in there to actually make sure that we are looking at our most vulnerable in the community, making sure they get better outcomes. So it's an ongoing piece of work of this council to make sure that those most vulnerable in our district get the support they need. And in particular, when we're looking at that, and we're looking at budget setting, of course, we are looking at protecting frontline services. And I think Councillor McKinnon's made no secret of the fact that when we're looking at our budget setting, and I've made no secret of the fact it's going to be difficult, we will look to protect frontline services first and foremost and look at what efficiencies and we can do in the back office before we look to front office. With regards to your particular request around cooperation with budget setting, I've actually heard on a number of occasions the portfolio holder for finance say that if you want to engage with him, he is very open to having that conversation. He's very happy to have conversations with anybody that wants to influence the budget. There is an element whereby we do have to recognise that there are pressure bids, there are ways that we put different things into the budget which require a proper business case and effective scrutiny, so we can look at how they sit within the overall budget as a whole, rather than a 3-day notice amendment whereby we've already been looking at how to spend the £154 million that we're going to have to spend, and that really makes it very difficult. So the portfolio holder is very open and has given me his commitment, if there's specifics that you want to work on with this in mind, but to sit down and have that conversation and see where we can go with it, and he is open to that.
Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah. Very briefly, as you'll know, this year we put forward 1 revenue and 1 capital amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Britton.
We put forward one of each this time because we didn't want to take up lots of time, because the previous time we'd have everything bundled together and there was an excuse not to vote for it on that basis. So we've tried different tactics. We have worked with the Director of Finance before ahead of budgets to find out what our various options are. So I welcome your commitment to talking to us. It is possible that we will have a different leadership next year, or even no overall control. So does the leader commit to working, you know, jointly between all the parties and with the Director of Finance well ahead of May to look at all of our options and think about what we need to do?
We are already doing the budget build now. We set our budget in March, not May. So the budget for the forthcoming year will already be set. So that process is already in play. I know the Section 151 officer is always available for a briefing. And particularly, we don't know probably until the 21st of December what our final settlement will be, which is where we'll have an indication of the tweaks and everything else that we may not be able to do. But come that period of time, then we'll be looking between the settlement coming in and the budget setting. And as I said, if there is something specific, the portfolio holder for finance is committed to sit down with anybody that wants to sit down with him and have those conversations so that we can see if there's something that can be worked in. If it, not just because you think it's a good idea, but if it goes through the process that any investment would go through within this council, which is around a business case submission.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor F from Councillor Masters to Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Masters. Sadly, there's a shortage of emergency accommodation right across the UK, and that is also the case in this district. I share your concerns completely, and the administration and the officers are actively working on schemes to increase the supply of accommodation for families who may become homeless in the coming months. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. Yes, you know, at the moment, as you allude, you know, we are short of emergency accommodation, and we have a substantial number of individuals and families residing in hotels. And while that sounds, you know, great on one level, it's quite disruptive, as you know, families can be moved, you know, within a week to another hotel in another venue, etc. Can you assure this council and the residents that you will be doing everything within your power to make sure that no families are in hotels, especially with children, over the Christmas period?
Unfortunately, all of the council's temporary accommodation stock is currently occupied. And as a result, very few households are placed in hotel accommodation for a very short period until a council-owned temporary accommodation unit becomes available. The housing team are excelling themselves in trying to find solutions to these problems. I can't congratulate them enough on what they're trying to do.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm working closely with them as well. Thank you.
Councillor Sumner, can you answer question G from Councillor Abbs?
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Councillor Abbs, for your question. The current typology, categorisation of the old football ground grass pitch at the southern end of Faraday Road differs according to the context. For example, it's included in the Brownfield Land Register for reasons which I'll come to in my later response to your question. However, it's excluded from the LRIE protected employment area as set out in the core strategy and the draft local plan review pre-submission version before us this evening. In the housing and economic land availability assessment, the whole of LRIE is categorised as having development potential, but with the caveat that it would result in the loss of the football ground. Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you very much for the explanation.
Thank you. Move to question H from Councillor Culver to Councillor Tom Marino.
Thank you, Councillor Cole, for your question. I can confirm that the council is currently seeking to recruit to a number of posts in the development management team in order to remove some of the temporary posts that we have, including enforcement. The council did take the decision to put a temporary freeze on all non-essential recruitment. However, it's important to note that any essential recruitment in planning can continue to progress. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Marino. It's my understanding that at the moment there are 70 jobs in planning, but there are 20 vacancies. So can you reassure me that those will be open for people to apply for soon? Can you give me a date when that will be happening? Thank you.
I can't give you a date right now. However, I have to take that away and revert to you later on.
Councillor Abbs to Councillor Sumner. If you've got any voice left, Councillor Sumner, can you answer the question?
Chairman, I think you might have jumped to the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead. I'm sure you would. Sorry, Councillor Williston.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Masters again. 13 out of 13 met the affordable housing target and 6 out of 13 met the 70% social rent target. Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you.
You didn't get much of a respite, did you?
Can say, and finally? No, not quite. Thank you, Councillor Abbs, for your question. This is the answer that I referred to a moment ago. I can confirm that the old football ground grass pitch at Faraday Road was included in the brownfield site, BR/201729 on the West Berkshire Council Brownfield Land Register. The site was first identified as brownfield in the HELA, Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment, with the caveat that the football pitch itself was green infrastructure. This was then carried forward into the Brownfield Land Register, which was prepared in 2017 in response to a government requirement and in line with the version of the NPPF, which was current at that time. The Brownfield Land Register is being updated to reflect changes made to the NPPF since 2017. Do you have a supplementary?
No, that's great again. I'll add that to the detail. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Last question from Steve Masters to Councillor Williston.
I am popular with this evening, Councillor Masters. The answer is there's 901 active households as at the 23rd of November last week. You have a supplementary.
Thank you. Yeah. What moves are the housing team doing to increase the emergency stocks and get people off the housing register, etc.?
Well, I know you work closely with the housing team, so you will know that they are, as I mentioned in the previous question, they're working sort of seriously hard at trying to find solutions. It is a concern that the numbers on the housing register have been going up, which I suppose you probably expect in the current environment. So to a degree, it's a moving target, but we will do our very best to do what we can.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson.
Members, that was the last question, and that concludes our business for this evening. Can I thank you for your participation in a very, very long meeting, some more than others. I think we've seen a good example for our residents of cooperative movements for the benefit of residents and some robust debate, which is a good mix. So thank you very much.